In March of 1999, the first episode of the anime Digimon Adventure was aired. 21 years later, there have been multiple seasons of the show, movies, and video games spawned from the original Tamagotchi toy. Over the course of the next few videos, we'll be taking a look at the show's English dub and talking about what holds up, what doesn't, and why I care so much about this show. Digimon Adventure follows 7 kids, Tai, Matt, Sora, Joe, Izzy, Mimi, and TK, who went to camp for the summer and ended up in the digital world. Before we meet our cast, we learned that the world's weather is out of control. Rainforests dried out, deserts became flooded, and it started snowing at camp. Tai gives us a quick rundown of everyone's character from his perspective. Afterwards, our main cast walks outside to see what appears to be an aurora borealis in the middle of the day. The kids then receive their digivices, followed by them falling into the digital world. One thing I want to say before rewatching this for this review, I never spotted the random campers during the first episode. Never really paid any attention to the non-main characters in the human world. Anyway, Tai wakes up in the digital world meeting Koromon, and our cast all comes back together with their Digimon partners. I would like to point out that during this time we get to learn more about their relationships to each other, and the way it's written here both helps and harms the show. These characters talk to each other as if they've known each other and have been friends for years, when most of them met at camp. Later we learn some of the deeper ties between the characters, but right now they aren't supposed to have known each other for what I can only assume is a few days, as Sora can't even recall Mimi's name.
Hey, what happened to that girl with the funny pink hat?
Now, her name is Mimi.
Anyway, after an encounter with Quagamon, the Digimon digivolved to their rookie forms, followed shortly by Quagamon setting them off the cliff. Now, over the course of the next few episodes, we watch as the team reaches their champion forms, and we get to learn more about our characters. Matt and TK are brothers separated by the divorce of their parents, causing Matt to be overprotective of his brother, even though he doesn't really know what he's doing. This causes a problem because Tai is also an older brother to Kari, who comes into play later. Unlike Matt, however, Tai has always been around his little sister, so his more nonchalant attitude tends to cause problems with Matt as they try and figure out what the best way to return home is. Then there's Sora, who is the mother of the group, and I feel I need to explain why I like Sora in her role. I stated in the Steven Universe video that the overly motherly character tends to annoy me, and part of the reason why is characters that become the mother of the group tend to become somewhat condescending towards the people around them. I have a few family members that can also be condescending towards people, the type that act like they're above others, and I can't stand when people put themselves on a pedestal as if they're better than everyone else just because of some insignificant thing that no one cares about. And yes, there is a point to this. Sora never comes across as condescending towards the other members of Digidestin, at least not to me. She comes across as someone who wants to make sure that everyone is safe. Sora acts in the interest of the group, which makes the more motherly aspects of her personality entirely tolerable to me. You can see Sora at her best when the group is later separated and she goes out of her way to help everyone without being seen. Joe's also an interesting character. He's the reliable one to the point where that's his defining trait. However, his character is more interesting for the difference between his English version and his Japanese version. In the dub that I'm familiar with, Joe holds the crest of reliability. But in the original dub, he's the crest of sincerity, which is what Mimi holds in the English dub. But Joe would later have his crest subtitled to be the crest of honesty. This is one of the changes that makes the series a little more confusing, as in Digimon World 3 they refer to the Digi-Egg of Sincerity to help you cross an ocean, which is referring to Samarimon. You try and figure that one out when you don't know the difference in the dubs and don't have the internet to help you. Anyway, Joe does tend to show that he's more responsible than the others, acting as the other parent in this situation they found themselves in, focusing more on keeping people out of danger, mostly because at the beginning of the series, he's afraid of what's in the digital world and the dangers that lurk around every corner. Then there's Mimi, who is pink. She is the pink one. Seriously, Mimi tends to be the most forgettable one for me. She complains a lot in the early season, and it's not until they entered their world and we get to see her family. I can't remember the exact episode while writing this script, but it's the one where her dad finds her in the park that I start to enjoy her character. Early on, it's fashion and whining, which can be entertaining if written correctly. Mimi just tends to make episodes start dragging. I don't hate her, but since I care nothing about the fashion industry, half of her dialogue is just white noise to me. Then there's Izzy. I would say Joe acts as the voice of reason from a survival standpoint, while Izzy acts as the voice of reason from a logical standpoint. He's the one that wants to understand how everything in the world works. He does, however, believe that aliens are the reason that they ended up in the digital world, which, now that I think about it, is technically true. TK is the youngest of the group. He's a little naive and treats everyone with respect. There's not much to say about him in the early episodes, and even knowing his crest doesn't help that much either. His crest, after all, is the crest of hope. TK usually is the most trusting of those around him, which can lead to trouble. He is shown to trust others until he has a reason to mistrust them, though he can be stubborn and needs to be told by multiple people or shown that someone is his enemy. Finally, there's Tai, who holds the crest of courage and is a fearless leader. He'll actively charge into battle alongside Agumon in order to protect his friends. He's not the brightest character, but he does have a good heart and is looking out for those around him. But I get the sense that while he's trying to get home, he's also looking for adventure, as he can easily be distracted by his surroundings when there's something interesting around. So while they're trying to survive and find a way home, they start coming across Digimon infected with black gears that turn them hostile towards anyone they come across. We learn that the gears are being controlled by one Devimon, and his plan is to destroy the Digidestined because they're the only ones that can stand in his way. In order to accomplish his plans, he recruits Ogremon and corrupts Leomon, ordering them to attack the kids. At first, the Digidestined fight, and Leomon and Ogremon disappear after a small avalanche.
What happened to the bad guys? They just disappeared.
Are you sure?
The kids find a manor in the woods stocked with food and beds, but this ends up being a trap by Devimon to weaken the kids and separate them for the first time in the series. The next few episodes have Digidestined search for each other and pull the now broken apart Vile Island back together. While separated, Tai and Agumon fight a Frigimon before finding Matt and Gabumon. Matt is entirely focused on finding TK even if his search kills him. When Tai and Agumon do end up finding Matt and Gabumon, Tai and Matt end up in a fight as Matt wants to find TK and Tai wants to find out where they're going first. After a quick fight with the Mojamon, they destroy some black gears in the island fragment they're on and start heading back towards Infinity Mountain. While Matt and Tai are on their adventure, Izzy and Mimi end up on two islands traveling together and meet up at some digital ruins, where Izzy gets preoccupied with deciphering the digital writing on the wall of the ruins. Mimi quickly grows annoyed with Izzy and dives deeper into the ruins, followed by Tentomon, but not Palmon. They end up running into a Kentarumon possessed by a black gear. After freeing him, he reveals that the Digivice has the power to expel the darkness of the black gears. They're also attacked by the possessed Leomon and use their Digivices to send him away. In the next episode, Joe and Sora meet up on an island fragment inhabited by Bakumon. These Bakumon are partaking in a ritual where they dress up as humans, celebrate the Lord Bakumon, and ritualistically sacrifice the souls of the living. The Bakumon try to eat Joe and Sora, but Piomon and Gomon digivolve in time to rescue the two and fight Bakumon, who proves to be too strong for Birdramon and Nikakumon. Joe and Sora use a mind over matter trick, chanting Bakumon lose your power to weaken Lord Bakumon so their Digimon can defeat him. In the following episode, TK and Patamon come across the primary village and Elecmon. We get teased with Patamon's evolution, but nothing comes from it yet. To be honest, the episode doesn't give me much to talk about other than in the English dub. I'm pretty sure TK is colorblind, as he calls the color yellow-pink.
I like the pretty pink, but
We learn more about the world of Digimon than we do the characters in the episode, which isn't bad, but TK is a Digidestined that gets the least to do early on. All he really gets to do is watch children and keep Elecmon and Patamon from killing each other. He does at least get some character development as he shows that he doesn't enjoy when people fight with each other. Likely because he comes from a family where his parents fought a lot, ending in divorce, and has watched Tai and Matt get into at least a few fights over the course of the short time they've been in the digital world. Eventually, Leomon and Ogremon show up and trying to kill TK, and most of our team shows up, saving TK and purge the darkness from Leomon, who then explains the prophecy about the Digidestined.
According to ancient legend, our world will be taken over by a strange dark force. Our ancestors have predicted that a group of children called the Digidestined will appear from another world. I believe their prediction has come true. Vile Island has been seized by an evil power, and now you've appeared.
Shortly after Tai's group makes their way to Infinity Mountain, Devimon grows to, I'm guessing, about 80 or 90 feet, or 26 to 30 meters roughly, and attacks the group almost immediately after Sora and Joe arrive to help fight. With everyone together in their champion forms, they challenge Devimon and are defeated after putting up a decent fight, throwing everything at him. Devimon goes out to TK and Patamon finally digivolves to Angemon.
What's this? Another foolish attempt? The forces of good are more powerful. Even you can't stop us.
Angemon uses the power from his friends and sacrifices himself to finish Devimon.
TK, I'll come back again. if you want me to.
The first arc of the season is a good one, even though there are a few problems I have with it. There's obvious things in the dub that don't hold up. Yes, the comedy isn't very funny, but after all these years, I feel like that's a part of the charm. The early season does have a few lines that stand out as wrong, like when Mimi states she's missing her mother, father, and baby brother. For those who don't know, Mimi doesn't have a brother, she's an only child. It's only one line early in the series, and you don't meet her family until about halfway into the season, so most people would forget on a first viewing, especially watching week to week. Another example would be when the characters are talking about what they miss from their world. Matt states he misses Sunday when his mother would grill steaks. His parents are divorced, and the way the show treats it, they don't have joint custody. This is especially confusing as we are told that they are divorced 3 episodes earlier. And let's double down because TK states that he misses video games and he was so close to being able to beat Matt. They don't live together and almost never see each other. It's not like they could play online. This is 1999 before online gaming was a thing, unless they're playing some Sega Channel. Oh wait. Overall, the first arc was a good one, and I can't really blame the people who wrote the English dub on what wasn't done right or the one-off character building lines that happened, as they likely didn't know when they rewrote the arc that we would return to the human world, and I can't really blame them for the humor or censored scenes because of the strict censors that told them what they could and couldn't show back then. So right after defeating Devimon, the kids come across Jedi and learn that their journey is not over, and they now need to travel to the continent of Server and find 7 tags and crests that will allow the Digimon to digivolve to their ultimate forms. Overnight, they discuss their next course of action. Everyone but Tai voices their concerns until TK states that he's going regardless, and the Digimon then convince them to leave. The next day, they build a raft out of the trees in the forest with some help from their friends. With the help of their friends, they get the raft built and set sail for Server right after Potamon's Digi-Egg hatches. It's not long before they get into more trouble when they come across Waymon, who swallows them. As it turns out, Waymon is under the control of Black Gear, and upon destroying it, Waymon frees them and befriends them. While talking about finding the tags and crests, Waymon reveals he knows where Devimon hid the tags and takes the team to a convenience store located in a cave guarded by a Dromojimon. After defeating Dromojimon, TK and Poyomon find the tags. When they finally get to Server, they come across a Koromon village now inhabited by Pagumon. The Pagumon give the team food and shelter, but some of the Digimon don't trust the Pagumon, and while eating, Poyomon digivolves to Tokomon. Overnight, the Pagumon kidnap Tokomon and are spotted by a group of Gazimon, who are the underlings of Edamon, the next big enemy of the season. The Gazimon throw Tokomon in a cage, and one goes out to tell Edamon about Digidestin. Also, in the English dub, Edamon is an Elvis impersonator, which is the sole reason why I remember anything about him. Edamon finds out the kids are here and launches his dark network. Meanwhile, back at the village, the team is looking for Tokomon, and Agumon has gone off to find the Koromon he was smelling when he comes across Tokomon and the missing Koromon. Agumon gets jumped by the Gazimon, and thinking quickly, Agumon uses the waterfall to send Tai a smoke signal. Tai arrives quickly, allowing Agumon to digivolve, and Greymon blasts the Gazimon downriver. Edamon then makes himself known by destroying the village, and proves to be a threat as he can cancel out the Digimon's champion forms. The kids and Koromon flee into the cave behind the waterfall, where they find Tai's Crest of Courage. They escape, and after discussing how to use the crest and digivolve further, they determine that Agumon needs energy from food and danger from Edamon. Tai quickly changes personality as he forces Agumon to eat, and Joe's tag starts glowing, leading them to a coliseum. Joe, Tai, and Gomamon go to find the crest, while Agumon rests and everyone else starts a game of soccer/football, depending on where you live. Everyone but Agumon gets trapped in an electric cage, and Greymon storms onto the field with the intent to kill the kids. Our Agumon digivolves, and our Greymon isn't doing so well as he starts getting thrown around by the evil Greymon. They find Joe's crest while trying to tunnel out of the trap, and Tai forces Greymon to evolve by throwing himself into danger. I really love this episode because it accomplishes 2 things. It provides information that we need to know about evolving to ultimate subtly with the kids having to act on their crest, using the part of them that got them here in the first place. However, it's also showing that their trait can be twisted or corrupted if they don't call upon the pure version of their crest. Their Digimon might evolve, but there will be consequences. Tai is showing courage here, being able to charge blindly into battle without concern for himself, but the courage he's showing isn't to protect the people he cares about or him acting in the face of fear. He's forcing a transformation in the hope that he can protect people, but he's doing it the wrong way, and when that happens, I like the way this evolution is shown, it's kind of awesome. So, Skull Greymon kills the other Greymon and turns his attention on Tai attacking his friends. He continues to wreak havoc before returning to Koromon. Tai quickly comes to the conclusion that he's wrong and has learned his lesson, getting forgiveness from the team. Okay, this happens way too fast. A problem that a good portion of the shows have is pacing. Digimon early on did not have the time to go deep into topics like my bullheadedness almost got everyone I care about killed. So more than a few of these moments won't get the time they deserve, but who knows, with the remake maybe they will. Dialogue does seem to be a lot more important there. So over the course of the next few episodes, the kids collect their crests, coming across some new friends and enemies. Out of all these episodes, I want to highlight the Piximon Cometh episode, the episode where Izzy and Matt get their crests. The reason why is this episode shows the emotional scars that Agumon and Tai both hold after the Skull Greymon incident. Both parties are afraid of Agumon digivolving because of the possibility that Agumon could become Skull Greymon again. They meet Piximon, who decides to train the kids. He has Agumon and Tai go off on their own for a special training where they enter into a cave and end up in a small boat floating aimlessly in an ocean. Tai falls in the water and Agumon ends up getting pulled into the water by Tai. While in the water, the two end up getting into an argument. Meanwhile, Matt and Izzy find their crests before getting attacked by Tyrannomon. We then see Tai and Agumon back in the boat drifting, coming to the conclusion the more they fight, the farther they drift. They eventually come to a bridge where they come across a young Tai trying to ride a bike.
What is it? Who's that?
Me.
That's you?
Don't give up. You can't call it quits now just because of one or two mistakes you made.
After helping his past self, Tai and Agumon realize they have to believe in themselves in order to get past their fears and be able to fight. Again, the episode doesn't have the time to go into this theme, but it is nice to see Digimon tackling the story. Now, the next episode is also an important one, as TK gets his crest immediately, leaving just Sora's crest, and we get some lore. The digital world is a parallel world where they exist in both the human world and the digital world. This leads to Tai thinking that his digital body doesn't matter, causing him to act recklessly. They get contacted by Digimon in peril, and they're off. Since they're on a stealth mission trying to avoid Edamon, they split the team into two and sneak into the labyrinth that Edamon is hiding Nanomon. I'm using the Japanese name because I prefer it over the English Datamon. Tai acts recklessly up until they reach an electric fence that could kill them if they go through the wrong place. Tai walks through it the first time, but it's not until the second time that there's a problem. Before then, they meet Nanomon, who is trapped in a cybernetic lock. Edamon comes in, and as soon as they free Nanomon, he betrays the kids and kidnaps Sora and Piomon. While following them, Izzy explains that if something happens in the digital world, then it happens in the human world. Tai, now too afraid to move, is unable to go through the firewall and is pulled out of the labyrinth by his friends who arrived after the fight began. That night, Izzy finds out where Sora was taken, and we see Sora, who is strapped to a table where Nanomon is cloning Sora and able to control Piomon to get revenge on Edamon. The next day, the kids go to rescue Sora, splitting up again so they can draw Edamon out to let the others sneak in. Izzy and Tai make their way through the labyrinth trying to get Sora. Tai and Izzy are forced to separate when Edamon shows up, and unable to wait for Izzy, Tai is forced to call upon his crest to save Sora. Tai steals Sora's tag, crest, and Digivice right before Nanomon tries to drop Sora into essentially a black hole. As the kids leave the labyrinth, Nanomon drags Edamon into the black pit, which is growing and absorbing all the dark energy in the cosmos. Edamon fuses with it and launches one last attack on the kids. Tai, still acting on his crest, charges Edamon with Greymon, who evolves to his true ultimate form, Metal Greymon. Metal Greymon uses all of his strength to defeat Edamon, and Metal Greymon and Tai are sucked into the explosion, ending up in the human world. The episode Home Away From Home is a strange one. As Tai and Koromon try and get a bearing on their surroundings, they manage to scare a girl and draw attention to themselves before running off. We see that Tai is excited to be home. When Tai returns home, he finds that his parents aren't home, and he spots a calendar on the fridge, learning that it's the same day as when they landed in the digital world. It's about the same time that Kari comes out of their room and recognizes Koromon. We learn later that the reason it is because of the digital incident 4 years earlier. Tai tries to figure out how Kari knows about Koromon and the digital world, followed by calling the houses of his friends. After Tai makes eggs for everyone, he decides to relax and watch some TV. On the news, he spots Digimon fading in and out of existence, and we learn that Kari is the only one who can see the monsters on TV. Right after, Izzy gets in contact with Tai.
No, it isn't! Tai, wherever you may be, don't come back here!
As Tai tries to figure out what to do, Kari tells Koromon he might never go back to the digital world, and later on, their mother calls them. After the phone call, Tai realizes the problems in the digital world are slipping through to the real world. Finally, a Tyrannomon appears and starts destroying things before slipping back into the digital world. Tai rushes out of the apartment trying to get back to the digital world, telling Kari to stay home. Kari follows him and Koromon spots an Ogremon. Unable to digivolve, Koromon tries to fight Ogremon and does manage to become Agumon after Kari and Tai's persistence. The digital rift opens up, sending Ogremon and Agumon back through, and Tai follows, forced to leave his sister behind. At the same time, we get to see an 8th Digivice back in their apartment. I like this episode because of the feeling it gives. It's just a little off, and it was kind of written to be like that. Back in the digital world, they find out that the team is missing, and they follow a signal on the Digivice to Tokomon, who reveals what happened since they left. They search for days trying to find Tai. Eventually, Sora and Piyomon left to find Tai. Now searching for Sora, they started splitting off until it was just Matt and TK. The small group eventually come to an amusement park where Matt leaves TK so he can scout out the area going across the lake. Hours go by and Matt never returns. After a few days, TK breaks down, which is when Demi-Devimon shows up. On a small side note, I never understood why TK is so trusting of Demi-Devimon, considering Devimon is the reason why Angemon disappeared. Not long after Demi-Devimon returns, stating Matt isn't going to return and is sick of taking care of TK, he runs off crying, and after failing to console TK, Tokomon attacks Demi-Devimon, causing a fight between Tokomon and TK. They quickly find TK, and now Tai has to convince TK that Matt doesn't hate him, and to go find him. Demi-Devimon shows up bringing poisonous mushrooms, and when Agumon runs off, Sora shows up telling Agumon the mushrooms are poisonous.
Put it down! Stop it! Don't eat that mushroom! Don't eat any of them! They're poison! Evil! Bad stuff! Hey, you don't see him eating them? Try one! Come on! Open up!
Now that the lie is revealed, Tokomon finally digivolves to Patamon, and they run off Demi-Devimon. Now, over the course of the next few episodes, they search for their friends, and we get to learn about the next enemy, Myotismon. First, I find Matt and Joe working at a diner paying off debts. Then the four split to find Izzy trapped in another dimension, and Mimi in a castle being pampered by Gekomon and Otamamon. Now, when almost everyone is back together, they have to find Sora, the final member of the group. As they draw close to Sora, they get attacked by Flymon and saved by Birdramon, who leads the rest of the group to Sora. She tells everyone about how she found out about Demi-Devimon and Myotismon. She also tells the group about the crest and what they represent. We also learn that Sora has some emotional issues as well. You see, Sora has a crest of love, but it won't glow because she believes she has no love in her heart, because at some point when she was hurt, her mother refused to allow her to play soccer and wanted her to quit playing in order to work in their flower shop. Sora believes that she grew up without knowing what love is, and as her mother acted from Sora's perspective as if she only cared about her flower shop, in reality what her mother was trying to do was keep her daughter safe from harm, but going about it in the wrong way, leading Sora to believe she isn't loved. Eventually leading Sora to the conclusion that she can't love either. Now apparently in the sub, Sora has an aversion to affection that we don't really get to see in the dub. That night while trying to sleep, the kids are attacked by Demi-Devimon and Myotismon. When all the Digimon other than Piyomon are down, Sora realizes while trying to keep Piyomon out of danger that her mother was trying to keep her from getting hurt. After digivolving to Birdramon and getting hurt, Sora realizes her love for her Digimon, allowing Birdramon to digivolve to Garudamon. So after escaping from Myotismon, they come across Genai, who tells them that there is an 8th Digidestin. We already know that this is Kari, but the rest of the cast doesn't yet. Tai also states that they need a spy on the inside. 20 years later, and I still can't believe that disguise worked. We also get to meet Gatomon, who has the most personality out of the series. She just stands out compared to every other character. We also get to see the gate that leads to the human world. So after getting Nanamon drunk, I know it's called soda in the dub, but it's alcohol, Agumon and Palmon sneak off to sneak the kids into Myotismon's castle. They start exploring the castle, trying and failing to find the gate to the human world, eventually following a group of Myotismon soldiers. As they find the gate, Myotismon opens it, leading to the human world. The kids scare off the small group left behind to stop them from following, and we see Gatomon quickly dispatch the 5 of the champions as the door starts closing. When the kids make a run for the door, Gatomon unleashes a couple of Dividramon guards and makes her way through the gate before it closes. The following episode has the kids meet up with Genai, where he gives them a deck of cards that acts as the gate key. The only problem is he has 10 cards for 9 slots. One of the cards is a fake and he doesn't know which. They also don't know how to arrange the cards. So they stay the night as Genai explains the situation to the kids. Overnight, Genai upgrades Izzy's computer to be able to connect to the Digivices, allowing the computer to analyze any of the Digimon that they've seen. So they return to the now mostly empty castle and start trying to figure out the cards. They put together that they need to group the cards by the 3 levels and 3 types of Digimon. After placing cards, they determine that the fake card is either Agumon or Gomamon. Tai has to choose which card is the fake and chooses Gomamon's card opening the gate. After running through the gate, they end up back in the human world, and Tai reveals how he figured out the fake card. He didn't. He just wanted to keep Agumon's card. So the kids discuss their next course of action, and they are found by one of the counselors and are told the camp is being closed due to snow. He asks about the Digimon thinking they're toys, and the kids quickly lie about where they found them. At the same time, we learn that Myosmon can't go out in the daytime, and back at the camp, the kids meet up with the rest of the kids, and they act as casually as possible. So the kids come up with a plan to get dropped off at Hidden View Terrace. They try and convince their counselor, only succeeding when Matt comes up with a sad story, and Joe states that he'll make sure they return home. Now, while the kids are on the bus ride home, we see Gaomon searching for the next Digidestin, and we learn that every one of Myosmon's minions has a copy of Kari's tag and crest that should glow whenever they draw near to her. So the kids make their way to Hidden View Terrace, where they learn that they all lived in the same area at the same time. Not long after, Mammothmon attacks the streets, and the kids find out because of the cops. Piyomon digivolves into fights Mammothmon. This causes TK to remember the fight that happened 4 years earlier when a Greymon and Paramon fought and caused major collateral damage. The kids realize that the fight they saw was a common occurrence that caused them all to become the Digidestin, and conclude that the 8th child had to be someone who saw the fight. In the following episode, Myosmon learns that the children have returned, and we see many of the Digimon the kids will have to fight over the course of the next few episodes. The kids, however, are now on their way to Odaiba to find the other child. Throughout this episode, the kids will miss their stop and be forced to find alternative paths home, eventually hitchhiking back home. The problem with this is the person they ride with starts taking a liking to Sora and Mimi. In the dub, he was changed to be Sora's cousin, and now knowing both makes this even worse. So one of the Digimon ends up making a mess in the car, and when trying to find out who did it, the creep throws Izzy off a bridge. Tentomon grabs Izzy, and they get attacked by a Gezamon. Gomon digivolves, and after defeating Gezamon, the kids use Ikakumon to swim home, begging the question as to why they didn't fly home with Birdamon or Kabuterimon. While on their way home, Tai and Koromon realize Kari could be the 8th child, and we see Kari's cat to find her Digivice and throw it off their balcony. So the kids return home, and we get to meet some of their families. We also finally learn about Izzy's adoption. I do love how both Izzy and Tai sneak food for their Digimon. So Tai and Koromon ask Kari if she has a Digivice, to which she doesn't anymore. So over the course of the next few episodes, the kids at Myosmon search for the 8th child, who doesn't have her Digivice, and while searching, Gaomon will eventually come across Kari, whose general kindness takes Gaomon by surprise, to the point where Gaomon tries to kill Kari. Even though the main story of this arc is finding the 8th child, they do have short side stories like the episode Out of Town, where Matt and TK meet up with 2 Digimon from Myosmon's army who are more interested in having fun than the destruction of the real world. I'm not going to go full into this episode here, maybe I'll come back to this one, but the point of the episode is the kids learn that the other side isn't entirely evil. Now the story starts taking a change when we find out about Gaudamon's past as a slave to Myosmon. We get to see Gaomon and Wizardmon interact while Gaomon is trying to figure out why she was unable to attack Kari, and after leaving Gaomon, Wizardmon finds the 8th Digivice. After Wizardmon talks to Gaomon and we learn about their past, they determine that Kari is the 8th Digimon, and since Wizardmon has found the Digivice, they use it to confirm Kari is Gaudamon's partner. And Agumon immediately attacks Gaomon. They work things out, and Wizardmon gives Tai Kari's Digivice so he can keep it, and Kari's safe. Afterwards, Wizardmon and Gaomon head to Myosmon's hideout to steal Kari's tag and crest. I just want to say, I love Wizardmon's characterization. Everything from his loyalty to Gaomon, the only friend he's ever had, to how quick he's ready to tell off Tai and attack anyone that gets in his way is done incredibly well. Also, his English VA, Robert Axelrod, did an amazing job on Wizardmon's performance. It sucks that he sadly passed away last year. So they sneak into Myosmon's chamber and steal a crest before Myosmon returns early. He reveals that he has a real crest, and Wizardmon and Gaomon stand against Myosmon. During their fight, Tai and Agumon rush to their aid, but are too slow as Gaomon reveals that she's the 8th Digimon, and Wizardmon is dropped into the river. When Tai and Greymon do show up, Greymon digivolves and gets beaten. So Myosmon kidnaps Gaomon in order to find Kari, and in the following episode, Myosmon starts kidnapping every family and rounding them up at the convention center. Before he starts this, however, we get to see more of the kids interacting with their family dynamics. Matt's dad is at work, leaving Matt and Gabumon home alone. Mimi and her dad meet up in the city by chance, and Joe is worried that he got a bad grade by his parents' specifications. We also get to see Kari worrying about Gaomon, and when TK learns that something's up, he just decides to go help, being forced to convince his mother to take him. Now, Myosmon's plan is rather smart, as he cuts off an entire section of the city with a thick fog that stops people from being able to get through in most types of transit, followed by him systematically rounding up everyone in the area to force Gaomon to reveal Kari. While Myosmon's forces are capturing families, Sora's mother learns about Piyomon, and we learn that Matt's dad knows who Gabumon is somehow.
Stay with Gabumon.
How do you know about me?
Never mind how. Just be safe.
You know, up until Adventure Tri, I was convinced that Matt's dad was one of the original Digidestined. And now that I think of it, if their mother was also one, that would have changed the context of their breakup entirely. Because one side could have wanted to explain the events of the Hindview terrorist incident, while the other one wanted to keep it a secret to hide the digital world and keep their children safe. So Sora and Mimi are at the convention center and end up fighting Tyrannomon, and Mimi calls upon her request allowing Togemon to digivolve to Lilymon and tame the Tyrannomon. At around the same time, Ty and Kari come across Matt. Sora escapes when Myosmon shows up and takes out Lilymon. Matt explains to Ty that they're cut off, and Ty leaves Kari with Matt promising to bring back their parents. We see Izzy, who sets up a digital barrier to protect himself and his parents from being found out by the Bakumon. Meanwhile, TK gets separated from his mother, and he eventually meets up with Joe. We also see Myosmon threaten to kill everyone if Garamon lies about the 8th child. As Joe and TK head for the city, Izzy learns about the source of the fog barrier and goes off to get rid of the fog. Sora comes across Ty and tells him where everyone is being held, and Ty tells Sora where to find Matt and Kari. And back where they are hiding, Kari is explaining who Wizmon and Garamon are when she asks Matt if everything is going to be okay.
He's alright, don't you think? And Mommy will be too, cause Ty's gonna rescue her, right?
But let's remember, Ty's just one kid and he's fighting hundreds.
Yeah, he's not very good at comforting people. Now, while Joe and TK are sailing across the river, they come across a Mega Seedramon, and during the fight, TK gets thrown off Ikakumon. And as he starts to drown, Joe dives in, saving TK, even though he's unable to swim very well, thus activating his crest. After fleeing the battle, they come across Wizardmon, and he reveals that he has Kari's crest. Back with Matt and Kari, Sora shows up, followed by Phantomon, who ambushes the small group. Kari watches the Digimon and Digidestined fight, and wanting to end the fight, she sacrifices herself for the safety of others. So now that Myosmon has Kari, he forces everyone into a deep sleep, and Mimi's crest awakens her after they leave, and she meets up with Ty. Around the same time, Wizardmon wakes up and shows Joe and TK Kari's crest. Not long after, they meet up with Matt, Sora, and Izzy at the TV station, and Wizardmon heals Lilymon. Almost immediately after, Myosmon shows up with Garamon to confirm that Kari is a child. They also get attacked by other Digimon and split up to fight and save Kari. Not long after, Ty and Mimi come across the group, being the last to arrive. So Myosmon questions Kari about why she would sacrifice herself, and Kari states that someone had to stop him from hurting people. Garamon also tries to protect Kari from Myosmon by pretending that they've never met. Myosmon attempts to kill Kari and Garamon before he's stopped by Kabuterimon and Lilymon. Everyone gathers on the roof, evolving to their ultimate forms, barring Patamon, who can only evolve to champion form, and Wizardmon finally gives Kari her tag and crest, followed by Ty returning her Digivice, which gets stolen. All the Digimon attack at once, unable to do anything, as the only one to land a hit is Angemon. Myosmon tries again to kill Kari and Garamon, and at the last second, Wizardmon saves them. You know, this scene hurts more after Tri, where they reveal any Digimon killed in the human world doesn't return to the digital world and are basically gone forever. So as Wizardmon dies, Kari's Digivice and crest activates, allowing Garamon to digivolve to Angelwomon. Once again, all the Digimon gather their power, lending it to Angelwomon, allowing her to finish off Myosmon. After defeating Myosmon, they realize that the fog hasn't lifted, and Izzy gets a message from Jedi, who sends them a prophecy about Myosmon, telling them how to defeat Myosmon permanently. So they return to the convention center to find all the captured people comatose, while Matt, TK, and their father try and find a way through the barrier. During this time, Izzy's parents tell him he's adopted, and Joe's brother tells him to live life how he wants to. Right after the captured parents start chanting about Lord Myosmon, and he returns as Venom Myosmon. And Agumon and Gammon evolve again, but are unable to deal any significant damage. Metal Greymon and Weregarurumon are defeated, returning to their rookie states as Andromon and Angelwomon join the battle. As they fight, Izzy realizes that they need to shoot arrows at Matt and Ty to defeat Venom Myosmon. This is the catalyst that causes Agumon and Gammon to reach their Mega Forms. With these new forms and the combined strength of the other Digimon and the children's crests, Wargreymon and Metal Garurumon put an end to Venom Myosmon. As the fog lifts, the kids look to the sky to find the digital world tearing through to the real world. It's not long before they determine that they need to return to the digital world, and they open a pathway. Myosmon's arc is a very special one, as it allows for character development with most of the cast. It changes from them trying to find a way home to giving them not one but two worlds to protect. And as they are in the human world and their families are in the crosshairs, the arc does ramp up the tension. It's my favorite arc of the original season. So as the kids return to the digital world, we meet who will come to be known as the Dark Masters. 4 mega-level Digimon that, in the time the kids have been gone, have torn asunder the digital world and reforged it in their own image. As kids enter the digital world and start learning about what happened from Chumon, the four show the kids their power playing with Digidestin, as they pose no threat to them yet. So I'm not going to go through every big detail like I have been, because there's a lot to this arc. As instead of having one big bad, there's 5, the 4 Dark Masters and their leader, who all get a few episodes and at least 4 smaller arcs that run concurrent to the main plot. And I'm already 17 pages into this Google document, and I'm not looking forward to writing another 17 pages. So the kids are forced to fight the Dark Masters and their minions in their home turf. They start with Metal Seedramon after meeting up with Waymon, who ends up being killed in the fight. This starts a rift in the team as Ty's bullheadedness in stopping the Dark Masters steamrolls his friends' feelings about the 3 friends they've lost in the few short hours since they entered the digital world, and Wizardmon. After taking some time to mourn the loss of Chumon, Piximon, Waymon, and Wizardmon, the team continue on when they come across Puppetmon's territory. He kidnaps TK because he's lonely and TK outsmarts him. I don't have much to say about him. The other half of the small arc is more interesting as Matt comes across a Cherrymon after Puppetmon separates everyone and convinces him to fight Tai in order to emerge from Tai's shadow. It's here during Matt and Tai's fight that Kari is first possessed by homeostasis, eventually named in Adventure Tri, who explains why they were chosen and why they have their crests. The second half of Puppetmon's arc is more interesting because there's lasting effects on the team. Matt is jealous of Tai, so anyone that can manipulate Matt, even a little, can easily turn Matt against his team because of the doubt that he's had from the beginning about not being needed by his brother. It's also something that Matt can't be talked through right now because he's also doubting himself, which leads to his exodus from the group. At the same time, Mimi leaves, unable to cope with the possibility of her friends getting hurt, followed by Joe to protect her if she runs into trouble. So this is where the story starts taking a turn. While on their own, Mimi and Joe start running into old friends and enemies with Geckomon, Otamamon, and Ogremon, among others. They start to build a small army to protect the digital world, all while running into and defeating Metal Edamon, also Mark the First to fall in Leomon. So after defeating Puppetmon and on the way to the next area, Kari suddenly falls ill. Once again, I want to return to this episode later to go more in depth with the events of the episode as we get to know a little more about Tai and Kari's backstory and why she's always getting sick. Anyway, the team is forced to split up with Tai and Izzy going to get Kari medicine and the rest of the cast staying behind. At the same time, they were being hunted by Machinedramon, and midway through, the cast all get dropped into the sewers below, where they come across a Warumanzamon who has enslaved a bunch of Numamon. Kari's light shines, drawing Warumanzamon away, allowing Kari to free the Numamon. They meet back up and defeat Machinedramon, who is my favorite of the Dark Masters. Not because he's interesting, but because his territory is interesting, and because I like the character building in this arc. There's also tension that the previous Dark Masters don't have, with them needing to get Kari medicine, which, considering when she gets sick, it's treated like it could be fatal here, ramps it up. Especially because Machinedramon is the most competent Dark Master. So as they start heading for the final Dark Master, the kids end up getting attacked by Lady Devimon. Meanwhile, Joe and Mimi continue gathering friends to aid their fight. While fighting Lady Devimon, Tai sends Sora and TK to find Matt and the others in order to be at full strength for Piedmon. After meeting up with the Lekmon, Joe, while grappling with his own demon, separates from his team to find his purpose. At the same time, Tai's team defeats Lady Devimon and spots Piedmon on his way to fight. So we find Matt lost in a cave being stalked by a shadow that represents his deepest fears and insecurities of not being needed by TK and his fear of loneliness. The episode Crest of Friendship is a good one for Matt. I won't be giving this one a review, but when I decide to make more character in progress episodes, maybe I'll talk about Matt and go more in depth with his character and this scene. So Joe finally finds Matt, and they find Sora and TK shortly after Sora gets dragged into a hole by her own fears and insecurities. So they talk Sora through her problems rather quickly in comparison to Matt, who had a few episodes where Gaimon talked to him. I guess it makes more sense that they can walk her through it because Sora's problem is that they have to save the world, and the stress of doing it put her in that situation. So Matt's group rejoins Tai after War Greymon is almost killed in battle, with Matt's crest activating. Garurumon lends his power to War Greymon before digivolving to his Mega form. So they throw everything at Piedmon, but are unable to defeat him as he starts turning the Digimon and Digidestin into keychains. He manages to capture everyone except TK, Kari, and Patamon, and thanks Sora and Gomon stealing Matt's keychain, TK is capable of calling upon his crest to allow Angemon to digivolve to Magna Angemon, who is capable of saving everyone via healing abilities, and defeating Piedmon with a magic gate to oblivion. So the kids learn about the true enemy, Apocalypmon, or Aparcarimon. I'll be honest, I like the English name more as it sounds slightly more intimidating. Apocalypmon is the leader of the Dark Masters and the source of why they exist. His existence is out of the negative emotions of other Digimon who cease to exist when trying to digivolve. He's interesting because his entire existence is of pain and misery. While I don't love his design, I do love his backstory.
As I sat alone, I watched all of you on the other side, laughing and having fun in the light. Do you think it's fair that I should have to live with all this agony? Why should you get to laugh when I am forced to cry?
His entire motivation is driven by his loneliness. In a sense, he doesn't want to be alone, but because of what he's made up of and how long he's been alone, his goal, instead of joining the rest of the world, is to destroy it so he's no longer alone in his own pain. He's also strong enough to delete the kids and Digimon's physical forms after destroying the tags and crests. After the Digimon reassure the kids that the battle isn't over, they rebuild their physical forms by calling upon the power of their crests. When they do end up fighting Apocalypmon, he activates his trump card, blowing himself up, threatening to take both worlds with him. They get out of this by encasing the explosion in a box made out of light with the Digivices. It's entirely a Deus Ex Machina, but I'm still fine with it because Season 2 and 3 end with one as well. I can't remember with Season 4, and Season 5 kind of has one as well, and I don't know about Fusion, but just about every arc with that one feels forced. So the kids are forced to leave the digital world and their friends. They're told that they won't be able to return as the gate is closing and won't open again. The last 10 minutes are actually really touching as the kids and Digimon spend the last 2 hours of their time together, with the exception of Mimi and Palmon. Palmon, not wanting to say goodbye, spends her time hiding from Mimi. Digimon Adventure does have its problems, especially the dub, which was cut down given a lot more dialogue, removing many of the quiet scenes. The dub even has many logical problems, as kids know many things that they shouldn't be aware of, like when going up against Piedmon, Tai knows about the team Mimi and Joe put together, despite that happening after they lost contact with them. Now, I love this season. It's engraved in me as I grew up with Digimon, so many of the problems it has I can look past because it's likely that without these changes to the script, I wouldn't have gone into Digimon in the first place. And while I would like an uncut version of the dub, I have hope that the reboot will be that version with better animation and less changes to the original dub. Also, on the note that the remake is going to be different, and to anyone who doesn't like that, keep an open mind as while it won't be the definitive edition of Digimon Adventure, it will be a good reimagining. Digimon Adventure 02, or 2 as I will call it from here on out, is an interesting season. After the events of the first season, the writing staff started fighting over where they wanted to take this new season, mainly because Adventure 2 had 2 head writers with 2 different styles. Genki Yoshimura and Atsushi Maekawa. Maekawa's stories tended to be driven towards lighter narratives, while Yoshimura's drove towards darker ones. Most of the time they ended up fighting over their vision, which led to a lot of filler episodes. Now, at some point during the production of Adventure 2, Satoru Nishizono, the head writer for Adventure, left because he didn't want to see a sequel for Adventure. On top of that, a good portion of the writing staff almost quit because of executive meddling. On a quick side note, I do hate when this is executive meddling in media, as it can easily take away from whatever show it's in. Sometimes it works out for the better, but most of the time I hear about it, things tend to go south for the show, movie, game, whatever. At least the executive meddling in Adventure 2 gave us Tamers. Now there is more, but instead of front-loading this video, I'm going to talk about some of the other problems as we get to them. So this season begins with TK narrating what the Digidestined that won't be part of the main cast are up to, and after the new theme we meet Ken, the Digimon Emperor, as he enslaving Digimon with the help of the Dark Rings. We see TK heading out for school on his first day where he meets the new cast members Yoli and Cody. As they make it to school, TK spots Davis, the last of our cast of human characters. At first, TK thinks Davis is Tai. Yeah, Davis looks nothing like Tai, he has goggles and that's it. I mean, they don't even have matching hair color. So I guess we should talk about our new characters. Davis was created much like the season as a whole by executive meddling. You see, they wanted Tai, but from what I can tell, they didn't want to use Tai, so they created a new one that doesn't get much character development, as the higher-ups apparently wanted a static main character. I can only assume the decision was made so that the viewer can put themselves in the shoes of the main character. Because of all of that, Davis becomes a more bland character. He likes soccer and doesn't think much through. Has an obvious crush on Kari despite her showing little to no interest. But he has a heart of gold despite oftentimes being a jerk to his friends, and by friends I mean TK.
Okay, if it's tails, I rescue Kari. If it's heads, you get to go. Tails! And that you... a coin that has tails on both sides.
The plot gets started as we see Agumon call out to Tai after being attacked by the Digimon Emperor. Back in the real world, TK meets with Kari in class, and we switch back to the digital world where Tai meets up with some of the older Digimon and sends a message to the old team. Back in the real world, TK and Kari are catching up after class when Davis runs up and demands to know how TK knows Kari. Yoli appears right after to give Kari Tai's message as she is the one that received it. They rush to the computer room where they run into Izzy, who also received Tai's message. Back in the digital world, Tai comes across the Digi-Egg of Courage and releases 3 Digivices that become Davis, Yoli's, and Cody's Digivices, and they're key to the digital world. So Davis, Kari, and TK dive into the digital world. Izzy is about to follow when Yoli and Cody return to the computer lab, and Izzy panics trying to hide the digital world from the two. Now there is an innate problem with this scene right here. The latter half of Season 1 happened. The world knows about the Digimon as they saw the events that transpired 3 years earlier. I'm not counting Children's War game as that mostly happened online and could be perceived as a stunt more easily than the sky ripping open to another world. The main problem is they hid the existence of the Digimon until they no longer had the option. However, if there was something wrong and they needed to help someone, they wouldn't hesitate to act even if none of that was true. I don't think for a second that if Izzy had the chance to go see Tentamon again after 3 years, that he would hesitate to go see his friend. Especially because if Yoli and Cody saw Izzy enter the digital world, they could either follow him with their Digivices that we have already seen them obtain, or when everyone returned, they would just convince the two to keep quiet about it. So they enter the digital world, and Davis ends up with a new set of clothes, and it gets eventually explained why Davis, Yoli, and Cody end up with new clothes being a subconscious wish. Honestly, I wouldn't have a problem with this if they either went all the way with every one of our main casts getting new clothes, but they don't. I mean, their options would be don't make more character models, which would have been cheaper, or make 2 extra character models for TK and Kari, possibly calling back to their Season 1 outfits in the digital world. So as Kari and TK try and find Tai, Davis gets swarmed by Numamon. So they continue walking and answering Davis's questions about the digital world when they come across Tai, and Kari and TK get to reunite with their Digimon. It's a nice moment as the characters do come across as genuinely happy to see their old friends. Also, Tai is confused as to why Davis is here. Upon Kari noticing that Gaiamon's tail ring is missing, Gaiamon explains what has been happening, and that they can't digivolve thanks to the Digimon Emperor. Davis shows his Digivice, and I swear if the animation budget for this season was better, Gaiamon would have attacked Davis upon seeing it. So we learned that the Digimon I'm just going to call him Ken. We learned that Ken thinks this is all just a game, and he believes that the digital world is something that belongs to only him. We'll get more into his ideology later, but for now he sends a Monochromon after the new Digidestin. TK and Kari try and lift the egg with Tai's crest. After both fail to do so, Davis tries lifting the egg and unleashes Vmon. Now, Vmon is a hyperactive Digimon that acts very much like Davis. I'm not a big fan of Vmon's voice as he speaks kind of like a gremlin, and it can get annoying to listen to after a while. Now, I do like his design, and while he does act like a more hyperactive Davis because he doesn't have a crush on members of the cast getting in the way, he does tend to be less annoying as he doesn't have much dialogue standing around impressing women. So they get attacked by Monochromon, and Davis activates the Digi-Egg, allowing Vmon to digivolve to Flamedramon through a new style of evolution. Now, I like Flamedramon's design. It's one of the few Digi-Armor evolutions that I actually like the design of. The other one is Magnamon. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the evolutions. I like the idea, but many of the designs of the main cast's Digimon I just don't like. They don't appeal to me very well. So Ken learns about the Digi-Armor evolution, and Flamedramon frees Monochromon from control to the tune of Run Around. I know I didn't talk about the music of the dub in the last video, where midway through the series they started blasting Hey Digimon every time they got into a fight, which could harm the tension as the upbeat music went against the tone. I didn't have a problem with the music being there. I did have a slight problem with the music just being one song. While it got overplayed in the dub, Season 2 has the advantage of having more of Digimon the movie's soundtrack available. And the movie does have a good soundtrack. The only real problem with it is the animation budget wasn't big enough for the fast-paced music. So Tai gives Davis his goggles, and we learn that the digital world is safe at night. The Digidestin returns to the human world, ending the first episode. So let's talk about one of the biggest problems this season has. It's not that they have Davis, it's that he's the leader. It wouldn't be a problem if TK and Kari weren't here, but because they are, it begs the question as to why they aren't the leader, as TK has the most experience in the digital world, with Kari being the second since the old team won't be joining them as much. The problem becomes, and we will see this when things start coming back from the first season, the season starts feeling hollow as TK and Kari are pushed to the side of the story. TK ends up having to confront Digimon again, and Kari's side story about the Dark Ocean is almost entirely ignored. Both things that could be interesting, but because of the constant fighting in the writer's room, interesting plots end up being replaced by what feels like filler. What makes this worse is that for the first 21 episodes, Davis barely grows as a character, so any episode where he's actively not becoming a better character makes the episode stand around others that we could have gotten just sting that much more. So the following episode has the previous cast discussing the new generation and Ken. The following morning, Izzy and Sora accompany the new team to the digital world while Tai distracts his old teacher, allowing the seven to enter unseen. So they come across their Digimon before being attacked by Sneemon, and once again, it's really nice to see the old team be really happy to see their old friends. Davis and Vmon get separated from the others and meets Ken for the first time. You know, I like Ken as an antagonist. He's smart enough to separate Davis from the rest of the team as he's the only one capable of posing a threat to him, and Ken steals Davis' Digivice immediately after chaining him to a cliff. The others come across the temple with the Digi-Eggs holding Izzy and Sora's crusts. Yoli and Cody pick up the eggs, releasing their Digimon Armadillomon and Hawkmon. Yoli, not wanting to partner with Hawkmon and fight, has to be told the reason why she should fight, being because she has to, and the bond between Yoli and Hawkmon will grow strong, leading to them being friends forever. I'm only halfway into episode 2, and this is already the 5th or 6th time I'm stopping to talk about something that could have been done far better. If Yoli is going to be the character that doesn't want to fight and has to be reassured that she can do it, then we need to know more things about her first. The only thing I know about Yoli so far is that she's a nerd with no sense of fashion. So when you tried to compare her to Mimi, who had to watch as the friends they fought alongside were killed, breaking finally when Tai and Matt fight each other, Yoli has nothing to justify the comparison. Mimi didn't want to fight because of the friends they lost. Yoli just doesn't want to fight. If you were going to compare her to one of the Digidestined from Season 1, you could have tried Sora, who broke down at the stress and worry of not being strong enough to save the world despite being one of the only people who could. And you know, the person whose crest was on the Digi-Egg Yoli just picked up. I mean, it wouldn't have been strong, but it would have been better. On top of that, the pep talk comes about 40 episodes too early, as Yoli, Cody, and Davis haven't been through anywhere near enough to justify this. So, Izzy asks Cody about his opinion so that they can justify giving Cody the Digi-Egg of Knowledge, and the new Digimon digivolve to their first armor forms. So as Ken tries to take control of Vmon, the others come in saving him and retrieve Davis' Digivice, allowing Vmon to digivolve. They free the Digimon and return to the real world alongside the Digimon of the main cast. In the third episode, we learn who Ken is and that Kari and TK left their Digimon at the school, despite their parents knowing about their Digimon's existence. Nothing against the season, but Kari and TK really should have just not bothered hiding their Digimon from their parents. Would have made things so much simpler. I mean, an adventure tried, Tai and Kari's mother knows about Agumon Gaimon immediately.
They'd like you if they just got to know you.
Yeah!
So we get to learn a little bit about Cody as the youngest member of the team. He will be forced to prove himself because we need to rehash things from the previous season. The problem being, Cody is not the most interesting character because of how his character is executed. He's a soft-spoken kid that holds his deceased father's memory in high regard. He practices kendo with his grandfather and never wastes food. Cody tends to be the most selfless character of the new cast, putting others first and himself second. Now, when you break him down, his character is rather interesting, but his monotone delivery in the dub tends to make his character drag, and the insistence that the show puts on Cody to prove himself, despite not really needing to oftentimes, forces the more interesting plot points to fall to the wayside, because Cody is a kid that needs to be protected by everyone. Cody's character, on paper, is an interesting one, but in practice, just wasn't executed well. So they introduced Ken and his talents, and thanks to the executive meddling on the American side of this season, Ken's talents are played up as a joke. When in the original season he's treated like a genius, the dub portrays him as an average kid with mediocre talents. There's a Tumblr account that lists the differences between dub and sub for each season. I'll put a link in the description below if I remember to. So the new team enters the digital world, and we see Ken walking down the streets, and we get to see the disdain Ken has for life. In the original dub, after a dog comes up to him, he kicks it, and in the English dub, he just tells him to leave him alone. He returns home, blows off his mother, and heads to the digital world, where he whips and kicks Digimon. Yes, it's shown. We get to watch as he whips and kicks a Lucmon. They cut away for a few frames as he kicks a Lucmon, but we get to see his foot connect with a Lucmon, begging the question as to why you cut out Ken kicking the dog in the first place. I mean, I know it's because they wouldn't let Digimon show the kids actually doing anything they could do in real life. It's why we never see Matt and Tai actually land a punch, as they use careful editing to imply the hit. But it's not even close here. So Ken has two Electromon fight each other as three Gachimon watch, with two of them getting captured. We also see Wormmon questioning Ken, showing he isn't entirely on board with what Ken is doing. The new team finally enters the digital world, and we get a signal from their Digivices leading them to two more Digi-Eggs. Along the way, they come across a hologram of Ken where he states that only perfect human beings can be Digidestined, and the digital world thus only belongs to him. Ken attacks them with a Tyrannomon, and once he starts losing, he brings in four more. So as the new Digimon are fighting, Kari, TK, Cody, Gatomon, and Patamon escape to find the two new Digi-Eggs belonging to Kari and TK. So Kari and TK get their Digi-Eggs, allowing their Digimon to Digivolve to...
Digimon, you're beautiful, but the best part is now that you can fly, we don't have to walk anymore.
Okay, Pegasusmon isn't that bad looking, but I do not like Nefertimon. She's a Sphinx, the problem being her face never changes, and the way her face is designed just comes off as uncanny, because her mouth never moves and she has no eyes, so she comes off as an unfinished character every time she appears. So they save the others, giving more credence that Kari or TK should have been the leader of the season, and back in the real world, the team discusses the events of the last 3 days. The following episode opens with the new team and Tai freeing Digimon from Ken's control, and Gatomon spots the first Black Spire, which blocks Digimon and acts as radio towers for his Digivice, spreading the signal to the black rings that he uses to control the Digimon he enslaves. In the real world, we see the team brought back some of the Digimon they rescued, and Izzy borrows Ioli's Digivice in hopes to find a way for the older Digivices to open the gate to the digital world. Back in the digital world, we see Gatomon, who has been captured by Ken, create a jailbreak and gets attacked shortly after by a red Vegemon and thrown off a cliff. Back in the human world, we see TK and Matt talking when we meet Davis' older sister. They get called by Ioli, and back at the school, everyone except for Ioli enters the digital world, as Izzy still has her Digivice. So Gabumon explains what happened, and we see as Davis is kicked out of the leader position by Matt rather quickly, as they don't want to rush in and risk someone getting hurt. They sneak in pretending to be possessed by Ken's ring, and once again freeing some of the captured Digimon, they make their way to the control spire. Once there, they get ambushed by Ken's forces, and don't do so well as they all get grabbed before they are capable of Digivolving. While beating Vmon, Red Vegemon destroys the tower, allowing Gabumon to Digivolve, and the animation team to reuse animation from Season 1. So the team learns that they can restore the power of Digivolution by destroying the towers, and after defeating the ambush, Tai, Izzy, and Ioli show up. So I know that the spires exist as a way to stop the team from being able to Digivolve, and we later learn that the kids were forced to release their power of the crests in order to protect the digital world after the events of Season 1, as a way to justify not giving Gatomon and Patamon their ultimate forms too early. The problem with that being, allowing the older Digidestined to Digivolve throughout the series and hold their evolutions could help keep Ken at bay. Once they evolve, they could have the power to keep Ken from erecting more spires and slow his progress. You also wouldn't have to worry about Angelwomon and Magna Angelmon because, as they would constantly be forced to return to their previous forms, they would always have to find and destroy a sector spire before evolving, which Ken would obviously reinforce as the series continued. It would be an easy explanation to keep the original cast out of the action as the new cast to progress to the next levels. I mean, Garurumon stays behind, but it would make more sense if Warrior Garurumon or Metal Garurumon stayed behind, as the Dark Rings won't work on stronger Digimon. So over the course of the next few episodes, we see Ken enslave more Digimon and place more spires, while the new team destroys and frees Digimon he enslaves, all while the new team partners up with their second counterpart from the first season. Cody also gets to show off more of his character as a more honor-bound character, pushing himself to his limits when the team meets up with Joe and Gomamon. While I disagree with Cody holding the Digi-Egg of Knowledge, I do agree with him holding Digi-Egg of Reliability, /Sincerity, /Honesty. And this is good foreshadowing. Now, while they're taking out control spires, Ken switches plans as they start taking out many of the towers quickly. After a soccer game that he plays against Davis, he runs away to the digital world, increasing the time he spends putting up towers from a couple hours a day to every hour of every day. During this time, Ken decides to capture Greymon for his power and likely to harm the morale of the Digidestined, new and old. He attacks the team with Greymon, forcing him to Digivolve wanting Metal Greymon, but ending up with Skull Greymon since he's forcing evolution. What doesn't go well for Ken is his Dark Rings don't work on powerful Digimon, and Skull Greymon destroys the control spire in the area and starts fighting Ken's forces before returning to Agumon and getting captured by Ken. Izzy learns that the territory Agumon was guarding was taken over, and upon finding out, Tai rushes to the digital world to save his friend. We also see when Ioli isn't up to fighting, Tai starts lashing out at the others while worried about Agumon. So Ken starts experimenting with his Dark Rings in order to control Skull Greymon. I will say, one thing I can't stand about this season is that they gave Skull Greymon a voice instead of growling noises like in the original season. Especially with the voice they gave him, Skullgreymon is far less intimidating. So Ken creates a new design. Now instead of having the Dark Ring, he has a Dark Spiral, and while he's creating it, Wormmon frees Agumon. Agumon escapes, meeting up with the group, and as they are leaving, Ken finds them and kidnaps Agumon by attaching his new Dark Spiral to Agumon's arm. He forces Agumon to digivolve to Blue Metal Greymon, and with the power of the Dark Spiral, he is capable of controlling Metal Greymon. You know, the Dark Rings and Dark Spirals are essentially the same thing as Black Gears from Season 1, just a little more powerful. They never try and use a Digivice to destroy the rings, spirals, or spires. Just saying, even if the Digivice from Season 1 didn't work, the D3s might have destroyed them. So after Ken leaves with Metal Greymon, Yoli shows up alongside Matt, and while drowning in his own sorrow, Matt helps Tai. Ah yes, violence, the true mark of friendship. As they search for Metal Greymon and Ken, Tennomon stops by to tell them that they found Ken, and Matt sends Tennomon to find Garurumon. They also come across the Digi-Egg of Friendship. They get attacked by a Flymon and Patamon gets grabbed. As they chase after him, Ken shows up threatening to enslave Patamon, and Garurumon shows up at the last second saving Patamon. They start fighting Metal Greymon, trying to destroy the Dark Spiral, and upon understanding why they are so willing to fight Metal Greymon, Davis obtains the Digi-Egg of Friendship, allowing Vmon to digivolve to Raidromon. They destroy the Dark Spiral, returning Metal Greymon to Agumon. Ken flees the battle, planning on strengthening the Dark Spirals. Back in the human world, Izzy asks Tennomon to find Ken. So while Ken upgrades his Dark Spirals, the team destroys more Spires and finds the other two Digi-Eggs of Sincerity/Purity and Reliability. There are episodes that I could talk about, like the Dark Ocean episode, that I'm not going to talk about much, as it's mostly forgotten as Chiaki Konaka was the one writing the episode, and when he transitions to Tamers after almost leaving the studio, the rest of the writers just ignored the plotline, leaving it mostly unused for the rest of the series, beyond one episode and a few brief mentions near the end, leaving what could be a good arc as little more than a filler episode. We also learned that there are more Digidestined all across the world, as Mimi has a friend with a Digivice. Eventually, the cast, old and new, decide that they need to enter the digital world and not return until they are able to defeat Ken. They learn how from an old friend, as Wizardmon returns to tell Gatomon they must save Ken. Now, in order for the kids to stop Ken without having to return, they cover for their parents by having the old team go camping. In the digital world, Yoli starts going more than a little crazy, and they discover that Ken's base can move. Also, when Hawkmon gets hurt and Yoli starts crying over him, I feel nothing because she loses her mind over nothing. Also, Kari stays behind to reassure Yoli and state that she did the same thing the first time round, which is wrong. Kari didn't put anyone else in danger because she was charging headfirst into battle. She risked her own life because they needed to move and she didn't want to be a burden to the others, especially when their team was fractured as it was. Kari got sick and had no control over her situation. She could only slow them down so she could recover. Yoli lost her mind and jumped into a hole with a Dokugamon because I can only assume she was tripping on something she found in the digital world. On top of that, when she's upset, it doesn't come off as genuine because they show two drastically different Yolis. One that is in line with the rest of the series, being the one not wanting to cause trouble. And the one that jumps off a cliff, climbed a spire Spider-Man style, and dove into a hole with a giant poisonous spider. So we see Ken creating an abomination, and we get an explanation as to why Yoli acted as she did. The problem now being she wanted to prove her own strength despite it never being in question up to now. So in the following episode, TK and Cody sneak off to go after Ken, leaving Davis to protect Yoli and Kari, who immediately leave Davis behind. Cody comes across Ken's base underwater alongside an entrance right before Ken starts trying to draw power from what he calls the Dark Pool. Wormmon warns Ken that there's a strong evil coming from it, while TK keeps Kari and Yoli updated on the situation, and Cody explores the base now cut off from the others. Cody comes across some captured Digimon and Davis finds a way to the others. Ken's base emerges from the water and TK sneaks on board with Tentomon. He comes across Cody, freeing the Digimon as Ken is exiting his base and comes across Devimon, all while TK watches. Ken steals some of Devimon's essence and he's told to beware the darkness. So this episode, this moment right here is the number one reason as to why TK should have been the leader of the team. Since he has a past with Devimon, being forced to fight a Digimon created from the essence of Devimon's darkness would show how far he's come since the first season, especially because it would wrap up the first arc of Adventure and Adventure 2. You have to remember, Angemon gave his life to protect everyone, using every ounce of power he had to vanquish Devimon. Even if it couldn't be explored in the first season, this left a deep emotional scar on TK. Devimon is the reason why he lost Patamon, his best friend. If he was leading the fight, he could eventually call upon his crest in one last stand, defying the spires and towers, allowing Patamon to digivolve to Angemon or Magna Angemon, bringing it full circle and being the first to reach Ultimate instead of the last one like Season 1. I'm not saying exploring these ideas would be better, I'm just saying it would be more interesting. It would also make it far more satisfying than it is when TK confronts Ken soon after.
When you can't think of anything to say, do you always resort to fighting? That's your problem. You don't know when to talk and when to fight. Now's a good time to talk. On the other hand, it's also a good time to fight.
It's the simple fact that TK manages to shatter Ken's confidence just by talking calmly and not backing down. If he was the leader, this could have been built up better as a way to show how vastly different the two rivals are. But instead of TK being the leader and rival to Ken, we have Davis, who never really gets this moment. I mean, no. Davis as a character couldn't pull this off, at least not for a very long time. It would require them to give Davis many smaller moments of character building that he just didn't get due to the constant infighting in the writing room. Also, it would have made this far more satisfying too. So, the team outside fights Chimeramon while TK fights Ken. When TK learns about Chimeramon, he and Patamon leave to help their friends while Ken regroups. So, we see Frankenstein and his monster terrorizing the digital world, erecting more of his control spires, while the team watches it planning their next move, and Cody and Izzy come up with a plan to stop Ken's base. We also see that Digimon's essence is starting to affect Ken. They set fire to Ken's base, the Tomato Stone, distracting Ken so the others can sneak aboard. They get spotted rather quickly, and Ken sends a group of Bakumon and Chimeramon. As they start losing, their Digimon return to their real-world states, and upon seeing this, Wormmon compares their in-training forms to human babies, and Ken calls off Chimeramon as the comparison strikes him. Ken rushes down to the team, and Chimeramon leaves no longer under Ken's control. Wormmon helps Davis, hoping to help Ken by leading Davis to the engine room and the Digi-Egg of Kindness? Miracles? It shows Ken's crest of kindness, but uses the design for the Digi-Egg of Miracles. Also, despite being the strongest armor evolution in the show, they use Magnamon once in the show and once in Hurricane Touchdown. I mean, I'm glad they don't use a broken character all the time, but you can use the broken character every once in a while. So they use Magnamon to defeat Chimeramon and destroy Ken's base. Again, I will say, I would have rather had Magna Angemon show up to defeat Chimeramon. I mean, they're both broken characters, might as well have the one that defeated Mega Digimon and will eventually go on to almost defeat another Mega later. With the destruction of Ken's base, the kids flee as Magnamon continues fighting Chimeramon, and we learn a little bit about Ken's past as Wormmon sacrifices himself to give Magnamon the strength to keep fighting. After the fight, Davis finds Ken's crest, and the team confronts Ken, telling him that the Digimon are alive. Upon realizing that the Digimon are living beings, Ken has a meltdown, throwing away his Emperor clothing just in time to regain the power of his crest and watch Wormmon die. We then learn about Ken's brother who died at some point in the past. Davis offers to help Ken, but he wanders off into the desert alone. The kids return to the human world just in time for Davis' sister to show up and kidnap Matt. While not my favorite group of episodes, the Digimon Emperor arc really is the best story arc of the season, at least in my opinion. The reason why I like this arc is because of Ken. This is the first time that the Digidestined had to face an enemy that was human, which comes with a lot more moral problems other than is Digimon good or bad, which many seasons don't do. Tamers, my favorite season, would be the first to actually toy with the morality of the fight with the Devas. I can't remember Frontier because I've only been able to sit through it all the way once, and Data Squad kind of did and kind of didn't from what I remember. Fusion did toy with it a few times with some characters. Reapmon stands out as one of them, which is why I talked about it a while ago. However, while the morality of how to defeat Ken isn't really brought up, that doesn't change the fact that having him be a human does help set apart the first arc of Adventure 2 from the previous season. So since Ken has now given up on being the Digimon Emperor, the kids spend their time cleaning up the digital world. During this time, the new team will start digivolving to their champion form, starting with Vmon as Davis keeps trying to force Vmon to digivolve to impress Kari. We also learn about Ken's older brother Sam. His brother was the smarter one and taught Ken everything. However, because he was a smart one and constantly praised by everyone, their parents would praise Sam and ignore Ken, leading to Ken's feelings of loneliness, also leading to him wanting Sam to disappear. One day, Sam's computer drops a Digivice next to them, and Sam takes it, telling Ken not to touch it. However, the Digivice was Ken's, not Sam's, so Ken was drawn to it, and once he picks it up, he was transported to the digital world, returning later getting disdain from Sam, who is more interested in himself than his brother, further isolating Ken from his family. After wishing his older brother would disappear, his brother ends up in an accident and passes away. Sometime later, when using his brother's old computer, he gets a message from the next big enemy and is told he must live out Sam's life in the real world or go to the digital world with a Digivice. Now, Ken enters the Dark Ocean, being the second time it's used in the series, and upon dipping the Digivice into the water, it transforms into the D3. After a small interaction between his parents, Ken comes to the realization that he was trying to outdo his brother with his actions. Now, I want to take a moment to say Ken is my favorite new character this season, mostly because, as a younger brother myself, I can relate to the feeling of wanting to be better than my older brother. When I was younger, I had a drive to best my brother at everything. This helped me push myself to become the person I am today, though only slightly. I don't know when I stopped trying to be better at things than him, though I would bet it was somewhere between 6th and 10th grade, when I started looking at what I was doing, finding my problems, and trying to figure out how to fix them, instead of seeing something my brother was doing and copying that. While I was inspired in my art style, the way I write, and even the career I hope to have one day from others, I no longer look to be better than the people I look up to. If that does happen, then awesome, but when my goal was to be better than someone else, I personally was left unhappy with the overall product I was left with. And to be clear, I want to improve my skills and to be better at what I do. However, I have no interest to outdo anyone else on this or any platform, or any type of media. So Ken finally wakes up unable to recognize his parents because of his existential crisis. Later, he sits at his computer to find his Digivice and crest. He enters the digital world looking for Wormmon and ends up finding the primary village. He ends up getting told off by the Digimon there who still recognize him as the Digimon Emperor. So Ken forces himself to remember when he first entered the digital world where Wormmon tells him to be kind and gentle. He calls upon his crest, finding Wormmon's Digi-Egg. And back in the real world, Ken finally recognizes his parents, which leads into a sweet moment. In the following episode, we meet Arukenimon, who is one of the henchmen of the big enemy of the season. We also see the kids still helping to rebuild the digital world. They are also discussing whether Ken is playing with them or not. One thing I will give this season that the other seasons don't have is that the main cast doesn't immediately forgive Ken, Cody even saying that he can't ever forgive Ken. Back in the real world, we see the kids having some downtime with their Digimon, which I really appreciate seeing. In the digital world, as most of the kids are trying to figure out why they can't Digivolve again, Cody gets attacked by a Thunderballmon, and Armadillomon Digivolves during the fight. Cody gets saved by Stingmon, who we learn is Wormmon's champion form. Ken shows himself leaving the others confused. Cody also notices the control spire still keeping them from digivolving is gone, and we learn that Ken and Wormmon are after Arukenimon. In the following episode, we see Davis talking to the others about recruiting Ken, and everyone has their reservations, TK being the only one willing to hear him out. It's actually interesting to have TK be the one willing to let Ken join alongside Davis. After all, it wouldn't be the first time he had an enemy switch sides. Godmon and Wizardmon were once the Digidestined's enemies, and TK also met up with Pumpmon and Gatsumon, so he knows his enemies can change better than the others. I do also like how Ken will have to prove he's changed instead of everyone just going along with it. So Davis meets up with Ken and asks him to join them. Ken, appreciating the offer, turns him down. TK, who has followed Davis, tells Patamon he believes Ken has changed and deserves a second chance, and we see Yoli questioning whether or not to give Ken a second chance. The next day, we see Mimi with a new hairstyle in the digital world, and Palmon comes across Arukenimon transforming a control spire into a Digimon. So Mimi calls for help, somehow yelling loud enough for all the kids to hear her an entire world away, and they come running to help. During the fight, Yoli and Davis fight over whether or not to destroy Golemon. Mimi ends up messaging Ken as Golemon defeats the Digimon, and as Golemon tries to destroy a dam to flood a town, Stingmon shows up, stopping Golemon. Palmon wakes up and reveals that Golemon is a Digimon created by a Control Spire. With the realization that Ken isn't killing innocent Digimon, Hawkmon digivolves to his champion form. After the battle, Ken apologizes to the team, claiming that he has nothing to do with Arukenimon, and after getting another offer to join the team, Ken declines, now with Yoli's forgiveness. So, as the kids clean up the digital world, Ken and Wormmon decide to destroy the Control Spires, and Arukenimon starts attacking the Digidestined with Control Spire Digimon. After defeating their second Control Spire Digimon, Izzy gets a weird reading from Ken's old base, and predicts that it's having a meltdown, and will explode if not dealt with. Davis tries to contact Ken, who is busy having a conversation with Arukenimon. Izzy ends up calling Ken and explains the situation, and as Ken makes his way to the digital world, Arukenimon makes herself known to the others by creating a new Digimon made up of multiple spires. Ken tries to fight on his own, and after Davis talks some sense into him, their Digimon DNA digivolve to Pyodramon. So while Pyodramon is fighting Okuamon, Ken and Davis rush to stop Ken's base from going nuclear. When inserting Ken's crest doesn't stop the explosion, they dive deeper into the base to its power source. As it grows closer to exploding, Pyodramon destroys Okuamon and arrives in time to destroy the base's power source without blowing up the base. Afterwards, Davis extends another hand to Ken, who is still unsure of himself, stating that he needs some time to think. The team resolves to keep an eye on Ken, and the next day Izzy explains DNA Digivolution to the team. We also get some retcon to the series as an excuse as to why Gatomon and Patamon can't digivolve to their ultimate forms. Which is stupid. The whole team giving up the power of their crush shouldn't be possible because the power is a part of them that has been there since their childhood. It wasn't something given to them, but something innate that they had. This is wholly an excuse not to allow Gatomon and Patamon to be useful on their own. So Yoli tries to enter the digital world when Izzy's mother comes in with food. So in order to stop Arcanimon's plans before they can start, the kids start wiping out the control spires. Also, much like the first season, Davis knows more than he should. He is the first one to call Arcanimon by her name before anyone else, even Arcanimon. Which kind of ruins the reveal later on when she reveals who she is and they realize she's a Digimon, not a human. So Arcanimon tries to destroy the kids by overrunning them with insect-type Digimon, and when that fails, she tries to take them out on her own. As the kids start winning, they get blindsided by Mummymon, who helps Arcanimon escape. In the following episode, we see the kids cleaning up more control spires, and Arcanimon creates the best random character in the season, Black War Greymon. He very easily defeats champions, and Yoli goes to find Ken, who went off on his own after a failed plan by Davis and Yoli to get Ken and Cody to work together. She brings Ken back, and Arcanimon orders Black War Greymon to finish off the Digimon. Stingmon and XVmon DNA Digivolve and start fighting, though he is nowhere near strong enough to defeat him as Pyodramon is an ultimate fighting a Mega. Black War Greymon defeats the Digidestin and goes off searching for a stronger opponent to fight. I'm going to say this, and I doubt it'll be that controversial, but Black War Greymon is the only reason why I watch Adventure 2. He goes from someone searching for a fight to someone looking for a purpose for his existence, almost destroying the digital world in the process. Anyway, over the course of the next few episodes, the kids will DNA Digivolve to the next level, starting with Kari and Yoli. During this time, we learn about the Destiny Stones that hold the digital world together, and Agumon meets Black War Greymon. After a long talk between the two about friendship and hearts, Black War Greymon senses the destruction of the Destiny Stone that the Digidestin are currently trying to protect, and goes off to destroy it. In the following episode, while Yoli is on a class trip, we get an interaction between Izzy and Ken, where Izzy pretty much states he's smarter than Ken.
I'm sure you've read it a dozen times. It's a bestseller in the school psychology department bookstore.
I can't believe I've never heard of that one. I feel so ashamed of myself.
Oh, don't worry. I've got an extra copy you can borrow. After all, we high IQ types gotta stick together.
In the original dub, it's a conversation about the mysterious email he received as a kid. On Yoli's side, she starts seeing the repercussions of Black War Greymon destroying the stones. The wall between the worlds starts disappearing as he destroys a second stone, appearing in Kyoto, only to Yoli, much like the Digimon appearing on the news in Season 1, only to the Digidestin. When Digimon slips through to the human world and Yoli notifies others, Ken shows up with Stingmon and Hawkmon to stop Apemon from wreaking havoc and returns to the digital world. Right after Yoli meets one of Joe's brothers and Sora's father, he explains the connection between Kyoto and the digital world, giving us some lore about the series, mainly about the Digimon Sovereign, which gets their names in Tamers and not Adventure 2. So the Digimon return to the digital world after a fight with Musayamon. As Black War Greymon destroys the third stone, Azulonmon appears for a short time, and Black War Greymon sets his sight on drawing him out to fight. TK tells the others that they need to find the stones, and Cody starts questioning the person TK is as he shows his darker side again. The next day, the kids split up into two teams, being those who can DNA Digivolve together, and TK and Cody. Gatomon shows up telling TK and Cody that Black War Greymon has a heart, and points them in the direction of the next Destiny Stone. As Black War Greymon shows up to destroy the stone, the Pyodramon and Sylphimon hold him off for a short time, and TK and Cody appear before he can start destroying the stone. Patamon digivolves, and during the fight gets thrown at the Destiny Stone, which lights up, allowing Angemon to digivolve to Magna Angemon. He tries to use his Gate of Destiny to put an end to Black War Greymon, but is unable as Black War Greymon destroys the Destiny Stone, returning Magna Angemon to Patamon. Azulonmon appears again, fading in and out of existence, and Black War Greymon goes off to find the next stone. After another stone gets destroyed, TK states that they have to stop Black War Greymon, and Cody goes to talk to Matt about TK, and Matt explains to Cody the battle between Angemon and Devimon. The next day, while trying to protect the Destiny Stone, Cody stands between Black War Greymon and the stone, trying to reason with him. His plan fails, and Angemon shows up at the last second, saving Cody. Black War Greymon destroys the stone, leaving one stone left. Now, while trying to protect the next stone, TK and Cody activate their DNA evolution, getting Shakuamon. Now, I haven't seen every Digimon created, but Shakuamon might be one of the absolute worst designed ones of them all. I mean, he can barely move, little more than a statue that floats around. Also, like I stated with Nefertimon, his face is static. He's unable to emote in any way except through the tone of his voice, which is split between two voices. So Shakuramon is able to absorb and redirect Black War Greymon's Terror Destroyer, and he questions their motives. Since they don't answer, he decides he'll destroy the digital world in order to find his answer. The kids tries to protect the Destiny Stone using their Digivices, which summons a Zulonmon. He questions Black War Greymon, and we learn that the Control Spire's purpose was to seal away the Sovereign and create instability in the digital world. Upon learning this knowledge, Black War Greymon attacks Arcanimon. Azulonmon stops Black War Greymon from killing her by telling him his existence has meaning and he must find his purpose on his own, to which he goes off on his own. Azulonmon gives us exposition about both seasons and sums up everything up to the end of the Digimon Emperor arc much faster than I could or did. Black War Greymon disappears into a portal in the sky and Azulonmon plants seeds that will become the new Destiny Stones. He also talks about the power of light and hope. You know, it's incredible how similar Adventure 2 and the Kingdom Hearts series lore is to each other. 7 Destiny Stones that have holy energy, 7 princesses of light, creatures of darkness that corrupt even the purest of souls, and everything coming down between the powers of light and darkness. An incompetent villain that keeps trying to use those without hearts who actually do have hearts to complete their evil schemes. A digital world that the main character gets to go to. I mean, the only thing Digimon is missing is a super powerful sword made from the bond of light and darkness, and stupid and complicated time travel rules. Wait a minute.
And disrupting its continuity. There is only one way to avoid this grave fate. A tremendous sacrifice.
What do you think she meant by a sacrifice?
A reboot.
What? A reboot?
Please tell me that's something you can eat.
So now that the digital world is almost safe, the kids continue cleaning up the control spires so Arcanimon can't create more Black Spire Digimon. After one time, Ken invites the team to a Christmas party and they all accept. Back in the real world, we see Arcanimon and Mummymon have entered the real world, and we also get to meet the next villain, Arcanimon and Mummimon's leader, Oikawa. He investigated the Highview terrorist incident and warns TK's mother that the Digimon are returning. Back in the digital world, the new Digidestined are planning on surprising the old cast with their Digimon for Christmas. So that night during Matt's Christmas concerts, where they sped up the song he's singing that they wrote for the English dub, weird choice, we see Arcanimon and Mummymon outside with a control spire. They ruined the concert by attacking the old Digidestined with a Black Tyrannomon and a bunch of Bakumon. We see the town full of Digimon, and at Ken's party they're playing cards when Tai calls to tell them what's going on. The kids show up and destroy the control spire that's keeping the old cast from digivolving, and they start digivolving. While fighting, they start sending the Digimon back to the digital world, and eventually have to start DNA digivolving due to the stronger Digimon that start appearing. After sending them all back, they return to their homes and we see all the kids with their families. I'd like to point out that Izzy and Mimi didn't hide their Digimon. I doubt Tai would have, and that would mean Kari wouldn't hide Gatomon. Joe isn't likely to hide Gomon, and Sora is staged to become best friends with her mother. So I ask, why has Kari and TK not told their parents about what's been going on this season? What was the point in those two hiding their Digimon in the events of the digital world? The rest of the cast, whatever. They weren't part of the old team, so it doesn't matter. The next day, the kids learn that the control spires are appearing all over the world alongside gates to the digital world. They all head over to Izzy's, except for Davis, who heads off to help Ken, who lives in an area currently under siege. Back in the digital world, Azulonmon gives Jedi, who is now much younger, a digital core. At the same time, Izzy is receiving emails from a few Digidestined across the world. We also see Ken meet up with Arcanimon and Mummymon. Soon after, David shows up destroying the control spire, allowing both of them to digivolve. While trying to send Triceramon back to the digital world, Mummymon attacks. Back at Izzy's, they discuss what's happening, and Izzy summons Jedi. He uses the digital core to force evolve the Digimon, and at the same time, Pyodramon digivolves to Imperialdramon flight mode, as a side effect. So they send Triceramon back to the digital world, and Davis, Ken, and Imperialdramon destroy all the control spires in their area. So we get some world building where tying Data Squad to this season becomes much easier as Jedi and a group of people are working to keep the digital world hidden from the real world. So this team splits up, joining with the Digidestined from across the planet. Before they leave, however, we get a real nice moment between Izzy and his mother. You know, the best parts of this season are those with the old cast. There's zero chance I'm going over everything that happens in Digimon World Tour. I mean, I love this small arc, but it's awesome to see all the new and old cast meet new Digidestined, but nothing much of note happens. They just return Digimon to the digital world. The only real thing of note that happens is Mummymon and Arcanimon start kidnapping children. When they all return home, TK's mother questions him about the Digimon wanting to know if he has anything to do with them, despite Patamon resting on TK's head. Not very bright, that one. This interaction is also interesting because TK's mother is the only one in the series so far that states the events of Adventure and Adventure 2 are 3 years apart. The rest of the season has incorrectly stated the events are 4 years apart, despite Adventure taking place in August of 1999 and O2 taking place in 2002. She tells TK about Oikawa, and he thinks that this could be Mummymon. We also see Cody question how his father died. We learned that his father passed away protecting a government official, and in the original it's not stated how he died, but in the dub he was shot. Fun fact, even the Yakuza have been known to be too afraid to use guns in Japan due to the penalty they would face. On top of that, I took a look into Japan's gun laws. They're actually pretty reasonable when you take a look at them. So we see Tide and Kari talking about what they're going to have to do to protect people. Unlike the first season where the cast was forced to destroy their enemies, the new cast haven't done that yet, with the only exception being the Digimon made from the power of darkness, being Chimeramon and the Control Spire Digimon. So Ken goes to sleep and we see his memory where he gets hit with what will come to be known as the Black Spore. I don't like the Black Spores, and we'll get into why when it comes up. The next day, the Digidestined learn about the missing children, and at the same time, we see Digimon start attacking the city. The Digidestined all show up to fight the various Digimon. They all end up together to fight Skull Satomon, who freezes Imperial Digimon and takes out all the Ultimate and Champion Digimon without much effort, and threatens to kill a bus full of kids. Izzy comes up with the theory that their Digimon aren't strong enough because they've been in the real world for too long, stating they've never been in the human world for this long. So let's set up a timeline for how long they've been in the human world. They arrived no earlier than noon on Christmas Eve, and that's being generous. Digimon World Tour takes place on Christmas, ending Christmas night in Japan where they started, and this is the next morning, no later than 10 a.m. In Digimon Adventure, they arrive in the human world August 1st between 10 and noon, roughly. We'll say noon to be generous to Adventure 2. The first day they're there, they go to their old neighborhood and take the rest of the day to make it home. The next day is when Gatomon finds Kari, and that night it learns that they are partners. The following morning is when Milosmon takes over, and the final fight begins promptly at 6:06 p.m. August 3rd. 2 days, 6 hours, and 6 minutes later. And the sun is still up during the fight. They don't leave until after the sun has set, which would be at least 7 o'clock. Yes, I looked it up. The thing I'm trying to get across is, if you're going to try and say they haven't been in the real world this long, get your facts straight. I saw this as a problem the first time I watched this season, long before I started looking at any show critically. The difference between the timelines is roughly 6 hours. And even in Adventure, 7 o'clock is when the sun is supposed to set, not when it's all the way down like it is when they leave. Anyway, the Digimon give all their energy to Imperialmon and he switches to fighter mode. While the old team's Digimon barring Gatomon and Patamon return to the digital world, Imperialmon destroys Skull Satomon without any question, and we meet Daemon who wants a dark spore buried in Ken's neck. Arcanemon and Mummymon show up to take Ken, as well as use the kidnapped children as a bargaining chip to convince Ken to come with her. Ken meets Oikawa for the second time, the first time being at Ken's brother's funeral. He reveals that he was the one that originally sent the first email to Ken. After losing the other Digidestined, we learn that all of Ken's abilities come from the Dark Spore that implanted itself in Ken. What it also does is turn the host more malicious. The problem being, it changes the context of the first arc. The original context is that Ken was enslaving Digimon by choice. He wanted to do it because he believed it was a game and didn't realize he was hurting living beings. And now with the Dark Spore, it wasn't his fault. It made him evil, so his actions weren't his own. He shouldn't be blamed for anything. Ken wouldn't have done that otherwise. This is what we call an excuse. The original explanation for Ken's actions was that he did everything because of his pain and loneliness from not being noticed by his family and wanting to outdo his brother. The Dark Spore throws all that out the window. So Oikawa infects the kidnapped children with the Dark Spore, and at the same time the other Digidestined are locked in fights with Lady Devimon and Marine Devimon, while Davis is chasing after Ken. The Digidestined defeat the Digimon, and Yoli is fairly okay with the death of Lady Devimon. Cody is more concerned about the morality of it, claiming it seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Davis catches up with Ken and Oikawa as they are stopped by Daemon. Davis jumps them as soon as Ken is pulled out of the truck, and they DNA Digivolve and start fighting as the others arrive. After digivolving to Imperial Digimon, they defeat Daemon and send him to the Dark Ocean, ending a story arc that didn't do much of anything. After returning home, Ken explains the digital world to his parents and introduces them to Wormmon. The next day, the Digidestined try to learn more about Oikawa, and TK's mother gives them the names and addresses of all the kidnapped children who have returned home. They try to speak to the children and are turned away at every corner. And that night, we see Black War Greymon enter the human world. The following day, Black War Greymon seeks out Oikawa, Arikenemon, and Mummymon. Meanwhile, the team splits up, watching the children, and Tai and Kari enter the digital world to speak to Agumon and Gabumon. They tell Tai and Kari that Black War Greymon is in the human world, and they go off to fight him. We learn that Black War Greymon wanted to meet Oikawa because he created Arikenemon and Mummymon. He also plans on killing Oikawa because he upsets the balance of the digital world. Tai and Kari show up, stopping Black War Greymon from killing Oikawa, and Agumon digivolves to War Greymon. While the two War Greymons fight, the new Digidestined go after Oikawa. Davis and Ken split off, going to help War Greymon. After the three Megas fight, they discuss life, and Black War Greymon goes off, stating they may one day be friends. The next day, Cody's grandfather finds out about Armadillomon and explains how his father would talk about going to the digital world. Afterwards, Cody takes his watch on one of the children infected with the spores when Oikawa shows up and tries to convince Cody to infect himself with a dark spore. Oikawa also notices the name on Cody's bag and reveals that he knew Cody's father. We learn about Oikawa's past, being an outcast, and how he created Arikenemon and Mummymon. The next morning, Cody asks his grandfather if his father was a good person and states he met Oikawa. We also see Ken following one of the children with the dark spores. She confronts him about why he would give up the dark spore. After the conversation, her spore sprouts into a flower and she gets grabbed by Oikawa, while the Digidestined that have shown up digivolve and try to stop him. Oikawa harvests the flower and gives the girl to the Digidestined. Black War Greymon shows up determined to stop Oikawa, and War Greymon shows up as well. Black War Greymon speaks to Oikawa before Cody's grandfather shows up. We learn more about Oikawa's past, and Cody's grandfather offers his friendship. Oikawa, however, is possessed by another Digimon and attacks Cody's grandfather. Luckily, Black War Greymon jumps in the way. He learns who is possessing Oikawa and uses the last of his power to seal the hole between the two worlds, so Oikawa won't be able to return to the digital world. The kids continue keeping an eye on the children. Oikawa shows up and he tries to open a gate to the digital world, which won't work because Black War Greymon closed it, and Oikawa explains his plan and why Ken was chosen. One thing I like about when he does open the gate is they use the same gate key as in Season 1, when the kids return to the human world, but he uses Agumon's card instead of Gomamon, so we get to see what world the kids could have ended up in. Everyone excluding the old team members enter the new world, and once they realize this isn't the digital world, we meet the Digimon that possessed Oikawa, who is the only other character that correctly states the events of Season 1 happened 3 years earlier. We learn that the one that possessed Oikawa is Myosmon, now Myosmon, Gatomon being the first to recognize his voice. Myosmon starts harvesting the dark spores, and he also kills Arikenemon and Mummymon. XVmon starts fighting Myosmon, who then traps the Digidestined in illusions tailored to the Digidestined's hopes and dreams. We don't get to see Davis's. Either he was the first to realize the dream wasn't real, or he didn't get trapped in one, and TK is the first Digidestined that realizes the truth thanks to Patamon. I do like the Digidestined's dreams. TK wants his family to be together, Yoli wants to be an only child, Cody wants to show his father the digital world, and Kari wants a world where humans and Digimon can exist side by side. The only exception is Ken, who comes face to face with his brother after watching his past self destroyed by the Digimon he harmed. Upon exiting the illusion, they realize that there are 3 versions of Emon, and Davis states that he wished for it. So they all wish for their Digimon to stop Myosmon, and each of their Digimon split into their 3 evolutions, barring Gatomon, who just gets her armor form and ultimate, and Wormmon, who only has Stingmon. Okay, it's awesome. This is the Deus Ex Machina for the season, by the way. During their fight, the champion forms of the Digimon DNA digivolve together, and they end up blasting a hole between the world they're in and the digital world. Upon entering the digital world, they are left with 1 copy of their Digimon. Myosmon grows more powerful in the digital world and somehow opens a portal to the human world so that he can start spreading his darkness across both worlds. Back in the real world, we see the old team heading back to the summer camp where Season 1 began so they can try and force their way into the digital world. The new team continues to try and stop Myosmon, who proves to be too strong for them. Back in the real world, the Digidestined start holding up their Digivices, which start holding back the darkness, and their Digimon show up to help fight. All the Digidestined enter the digital world, with the old team bringing the child who had a dark spore already harvested from her. After they arrive, the negative emotions from the infected children feed Myosmon's power, and the Digidestined try to reassure the children by telling them not to give up on their dreams. Doing this defeats Myosmon and grants all the children their own Digimon. After destroying Myosmon, Jedi shows up returning Gatomon's tail ring, saying it kept the darkness in check and allowed them to DNA digivolve. While Genai is explaining this, Cody helps Oikawa into the digital world. We meet his Digimon, and Oikawa sacrifices himself to help fix and protect the digital world. Afterwards, we jump 15 to 25 years into the future to see how they all turned out. And that's the second season of Digimon. It has many problems, and at first the small problems are just nitpicking. But when you really take a step back to look at the big picture, you start to notice how one small flaw can spiral into a much bigger one. Like with the Dark Spore changing the entire context of the first arc from being Ken's choices to being because of the Dark Spore. Or taking away Patamon and Gamamon's ability to reach Ultimate so they can DNA Digivolve. It's not that I want them to be able to reach Ultimate day one, it's that the reason behind it feels forced, and there was already a reason as to why they couldn't Digivolve thanks to the control spires. Though it's not all that bad. Rewatching this season this time, I realized how much Ty's team had to do with the early season and the late season. And every time they appeared, I found that the series' strengths showed through. I also found myself really enjoying certain characters more like Cody. Before this watch through, I found Cody to be a little more than the kid that has to prove himself due to early episodes like when they find Samarimon's Digi-Egg. But in reality, he is more the calm look at the big picture type of character with an honorable personality. The type of person that puts others first before himself. It's one of the reasons why I think Cody and Yoli should swap the Digi-Egg of love and knowledge. Adventure 2 is not a bad season. It's riddled with flaws, yes, but many of those flaws come from executive meddling or writer infighting. Plots like the Dark Ocean are left to the wayside, coming up from time to time, but are left mostly in shadow as a person who wanted to tell a story using it left to work on Tamers. There are great episodes in here, like Ghost of a Chance that brings back Wizardmon one last time, A Very Digi Christmas, and Digimon World Tour, Genesis of Evil, where we learn about Ken's backstory. I don't even have much of a problem with the characters. Yeah, Davis can get annoying, Yoli can be just as loud and obnoxious, and Cody is monotone for most of the season, causing some scenes with him to drag on, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. The problem does come from the logical problems that contradict Season 1. The Digidestined giving up their crests despite it being a part of them. The Digimon not being able to stay in the human world because they get weaker the longer they stay, despite staying longer than 2 days back in Season 1. I stated before that I am biased when I talk about Digimon. While there are problems in this season, I do end up enjoying my time when I watch this season. If I didn't, I wouldn't have made it a yearly tradition to binge watch the first 3 seasons. There is more good than bad here, especially in the moments when the kids take time to just sit down and talk, when they aren't fighting to save the digital world. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I try to talk to people who leave comments, and I read every comment I get.
This is the big one. Digimon Tamers has been my favorite season since the beginning. There's plenty of reasons why this is my favorite season, and we will get into some of them. Though I do want to state that I'm going to try and make this video shorter than the last two because I could talk about Tamers for hours. So Tamers brings us a brand new cast of characters as Events of Adventure is now a TV series for our new generation to enjoy. Beyond that, the Digimon franchise also supports a Digimon card game and Digimon video games enjoyed by the Digidestined/Tamers. We begin meeting Calumon, a childish Digimon that holds the power of evolution, running from a Digimon, and he gets blasted to the human world after a Dark Tyrannomon shows up and kills the Digimon chasing Calumon. Something I never thought about until writing this. The first thing we see with this season is Takato and Kazu playing the Digimon card game, where Takato defeats the Digimon that was chasing Calumon by evolving his Tyrannomon into Dark Tyrannomon. 1, that's some good foreshadowing, if I'm only noticing it now. And 2, it raises the question, do the kids that play the Digimon card game affect the digital world the same way the video games do? It doesn't come back, but it's an interesting thought that the kids playing a game for fun are the root cause of some of the problems in the digital world, which would explain why Zuchaomon wants to destroy the human world initially. So, as Takato and his friends Kazu and Kanta are heading to school, Takato drops his cards and finds a mysterious blue card that fries his card reader and makes him late for class. Because of this, he has to wait in the hallway where he creates Guilmon. This is where we get to why Takato is my favorite of all the Digidestined. He is such a fan of the series that it inspires him to create his own Digimon. At the age of 10, he's 12 in the dub, but 10 originally. Takato is a creative kid who loves what he loves and doesn't care what anyone else thinks about it. which I and many other people can easily relate to. He also isn't the brightest kid and can be known to speak before thinking, like when he moused off to his teacher in the first episode. Now, at the end of the day, while Takato is still doing his work because he likely got detention, he gets scared by Jerry, one of the sidecasts that will become more important as the series goes on, and the love interest for Takato. I like Jerry, and those reasons come late into the series. What you need to know to start is she's a weird kid that always has a puppet that she talks with, and she's generally nice to everyone around her, always laughing and smiling. Takato returns to where he left his cards while a storm starts. His card reader transforms into a Digivice, and Takato has a fairly normal reaction, not believing that it just appeared. I mean, if my phone all of a sudden became a Digivice, I would think I was losing it too.
It's impossible. I'm going nuts. I'm sitting inside of a dinosaur with a Digivice, right?
So after returning home to his parents' bakery, he runs up to his room where he tries to find the blue card that transformed his card reader. He tries to rationalize the events of that morning, and he tries to swipe his notebook where he drew Guilmon. It gets stuck, and as he goes to leave, all of his many notes on Guilmon and his abilities get scanned, and Guilmon's egg appears on the screen of the Digivice. That night, another Digimon appears, and in Takato's dream, he watches Rika, or Ruki, Japanese name, fight with Renamon to take down Lynxmon. During the fight, Renamon senses Takato and Guilmon, though for the longest time I didn't realize that this was more foreshadowing for events yet to come. This time being that Digimon are capable of finding other Digimon just by using their more feral senses. After the fight, Takato wakes up and asks his dad about Digimon, questioning him on what if they were real. I actually remember being that kid that wondered what if the stuff I loved was real. I remember playing Naruto, running around my school playground with friends, pretending to be whatever character. Same with Digimon and even Pokemon. My point is, I can see a lot of myself in Takato. Tamers likely helped shape my personality more so than any other series I've watched, played, or read. Takato tells his friends that Digimon are real, to which they don't believe him. After they leave, Takato learns Guilmon's egg hatched and he finds a compass on his Digivice. He runs off to find Guilmon, and we meet Yamaki, our government agent that hates Digimon and wants to destroy them all so they can't harm the real world. While Takato is searching for Guilmon, we meet Henry, or Jian Liang, which I guarantee I mispronounced, and his sister Susie. I'm not even going to try with her original name, alongside Henry's partner, Terriermon. Takato finds Guilmon as he emerges from the digital world, and Guilmon immediately hits a rat with his pyrosphere. While Takato is introducing himself, and as Guilmon turns to face Takato for the first time, Takato realizes that he could be in danger because Guilmon might not be friendly. This is a great first episode because it takes time to introduce you to our main character. We only get to know very surface things about all of our supporting cast and our other two main Tamer characters. While this is the start of the season, Tamers takes its time to introduce you to the kids before they're saving the world, unlike every other season where saving the world comes first. The first arc of Tamers is less about stopping the first enemy, and instead, it wants to show you the kids coming together, and just trying to keep the peace of their world alongside their new friends. At least that's true with Takato and Henry. Anyway, it doesn't take long for Guilmon to reveal that he's not hostile to Takato, and Takato sneaks Guilmon back home, hiding him from his parents, and once in his room, we see why Guilmon is my favorite Digimon. Now, the genius behind Guilmon, at least in the dub, is that he acts like a dog. Oftentimes, Takato will call him boy, which can be shorthand for dog. Now, intentional or not, what makes this work is when you make the connection that Takato and Guilmon's relationship can be described as a boy and his dog, it immediately creates a connection between the viewer and Guilmon. The way Guilmon acts can hit whatever portion of your brain that houses nostalgia. Many kids grow up with a childhood pet that they were likely close to. So if you see yourself in Takato's shoes, you could easily see the connections he and Guilmon have, allowing you to care more deeply about their problems. So Guilmon immediately starts messing up Takato's room, throwing everything off his desk, and Takato pulls out his goggles. That night, while the two sleep, Takato's parents discuss getting him a pet and why they can't. This isn't too important, but I want to highlight Takato's parents. While they contribute very little to the series, we're constantly being shown his parents interacting with each other. When they do, they're often joking with each other and discussing stuff about Takato. Later in the series, when he's really late getting home, they go out searching for him, worried that he was in trouble. Rika also has a good relationship dynamic with her mother and grandmother that I may get into later, and Henry has a good one with his father, though he rarely interacts with his mother. Anyway, a Gobblemon appears and Rika and Renamon show up to defeat it. During the fight, Goblimon digivolves with the help of Calumon. Afterwards, Renamon, with the help of a modified cards, defeats Fugamon, a variant of Ogamon, and loads his data. This is the first time we see data being loaded, breaking the well-known rule that Digimon never truly die. We also get to see the beginning relationship of Rika and Renamon, who are somewhat cold to each other. They primarily want to have powers, so they fight every Digimon they find, so Renamon can have the power to digivolve and Rika can be the best tamer. The following morning, Takato hides Guilmon in a box, in an alley, telling him to stay in it. And he goes to school, where Guilmon follows him. In the school, Guilmon searches for Takato when he comes across the school's principal.
Student? Shouldn't you be in class?
In a box.
And just what's with this cardboard box, anyway? Take it off!
No, Takatomon said stay in box.
When you're at school, you obey the principal. So when I say take off the box, you take off the box.
Okay.
Afterwards, Takato finds out that Guilmon is in the school where before he thought he was seeing things when he saw Guilmon's box. And upon finding out that Guilmon is missing, he goes to find Guilmon and Henry overhears Takato say Guilmon's name. This leads Henry to introduce himself and Terriermon. Their relationship is very much that of close friends that have known each other for years, mixed slightly with that of an older brother-younger brother dynamic. They often joke with each other, and Henry often has to keep Terriermon in line since he always speaks either very bluntly or very sarcastically, antagonizing others. Terriermon pretty much states that Takato screwed up, and Takato runs off thinking that he won't be able to find Guilmon. Not long after, Takato finds Guilmon on the roof of the school. Afterwards, the two go to the park searching for a place for Guilmon to live, where they get attacked by Rika and Renamon. After a small back and forth between Rika and Takato, the two Digimon start fighting. Takato tries to get Guilmon to stop fighting, though Guilmon doesn't listen because early on he goes feral when he fights. Takato manages to break through to Guilmon before things get too bad, sending Renamon away. After Rika orders Renamon to continue fighting, Henry and Terriermon show up, stopping the fight. He questions Rika about why they're fighting, and we get the first scene of many where the three tamers show their varying ideas of what Digimon are meant for. Henry takes a neutral stance of they're like people and want to do what the kids want to do. Rika believes that Digimon are nothing more than data and exist only to fight and become stronger, and Takato, much like Henry, believes Digimon can do whatever they want. Takato and Henry introduce themselves to each other properly while their Digimon play together. So over the next few episodes, the three will reach their champion forms, and we will learn more about them and the shadow organization Hypnos. Each evolution in this season is special. In Adventure, the first evolution comes when the kids are in danger. The second tends to come when they pass a hurdle and act upon their assigned crest. In Tamers, they evolve differently. When they all evolve to their champion forms is when the Digimon are in danger and the kids are worried about them. When Terriermon is almost blasted by Renamon, he digivolves despite Henry not wanting him to. When Renamon is almost killed by a Dokugamon, she digivolves when Rika starts learning that she cares about Renamon. A feeling that she will deny later, but it's the start. Guilmon only digivolves after Takato realizes Guilmon is his best friend, and when Guilmon is in danger from Davidramon. Unlike the previous seasons where Digivolutions was just kind of a plot point for the main characters, this time around they digivolve only when the Digimon kids' bonds grow stronger, justifying the evolutions as more than just a more powerful form. Now, before we get into the Deva arc where the series gets amazing, let's talk more about the kids and their bonds with their Digimon. And let's do that in order of when it happens. So let's start with Henry. The episode It Came From the Other Side is the episode where we learn about why Henry doesn't like Terriermon fighting. Before he was a tamer, his father got him a brand new Digimon game, and when he gets Terriermon, the Goramon he was using at the time escapes into the network, at least originally. In the dub, Henry chooses Terriermon over Gorillamon, and when the game refuses to shut down, Henry concludes that Digimon have a reality of their own. Regardless of the dub, Henry realizes that the Digimon he fought in the game were real and that his actions hurt both Terriermon and the Digimon he fought. His fears about fighting also spawned from the game when Terriermon originally digivolved and lost control of his own power. It was after that that Henry found his blue card and brought Terriermon to our world. He then promises that Terriermon won't have to fight anymore, which would keep Terriermon safe. Now when it comes to Rika and Renamon, I need to start with Rika and her mother's relationship. They do not have a good one, and from what I understand, before the series began, Rika's parents divorced and her dad isn't around too often, possibly not at all, as we only see him in a memory during Runaway Locomon. So Rika lives with her mother and grandmother. Rika's mother is a model that is fairly successful.
which causes her not to be around very often, usually having to run off when she is around. Early on, we see Rika's mother trying to relate to Rika, though she isn't very good at it. Though Rika, jaded, gives her very short answers and generally ignores her. Rika's mother also wants Rika to follow in her footsteps and become a model, to which Rika doesn't. And Rika generally has a better relationship with her grandmother because she more often respects Rika's wishes better than Rika's mother. The base problem between Rika and her mother is that her mother isn't around as much as she probably should be, though saying she should work less is easier said than done. Maybe her mother has bills and has to work as much as she does. Maybe she doesn't. It isn't that important, only really offering a little more context as it doesn't affect things too much. What does affect is how Rika sees her mother. Rika's viewpoint is that her mother is always leaving. Whenever she is supposed to be around, work calls and her mother leaves. This causes their relationship to become more distant in a problematic way. Keep in mind that most kids form their view of relationships from their childhood friends and their parents. So what do we know about Rika's relationships? Her parents split up, then her father was never around, and her mother was constantly working, also never around. Rika's grandmother probably helped raise Rika from then on, and because we never see any of Rika's other friends, it can be assumed either those friendships didn't last, or she just never really had any. So, from what we can infer with what the show gives us, Rika would likely be an outcast at this point in life. Digimon is generally seen as for boys in the series. Comments from Takado's classmates is the only proof I needed for that assessment, but Rika's title as Digimon Queen also adds more weight to that. So, coupled with Rika going to an all-girls school, she likely wouldn't fit in with them at a younger age, as in the early 2000s, liking the stereotypical other gender thing was generally frowned upon. Obviously, that's changing thanks to many shows from the last decade. Anyway, inferring that Rika is seen as an outcast by classmates and her parents' divorce and mother's job making her home life rocky, Rika's idea of a relationship would be twisted to the point where she would keep everyone at arm's reach. Primarily because if you don't get close to anyone, you can't be hurt by anyone. All this brings us to Renamon. When it comes to how they interact, Rika can be cold to Renamon, acting more as business partners rather than friends. When given the opportunity to become a tamer, she just wants a strong Digimon she can evolve. So her early perception of Renamon and her situation is that of, we fight, then Renamon evolves. Over time, we watch as Rika opens up and starts to care more about her Digimon, as Renamon is the first one that is always around her, and because she is unable to fight Digimon on her own, Rika is forced to depend on Renamon. As they work together, they slowly grow closer as they rely on each other to fight. The data from each battle is a means to an end, as it's the bond they forge from fighting together, and Renamon always being close to Rika. That eventually leads to Rika caring enough about Renamon that she evolves to Cubimon when faced with the idea that Rika could lose Renamon forever. Now, after Renamon digivolves, Takado is faced with the idea that Guilmon could just disappear, as while walking with him one night, Guilmon starts fading away. He ends up finding Rika and asks her opinion about whether or not Digimon can return to the digital world, and as the two walk home afterwards, Takado watches as Guilmon fades away. Takado alongside Henry and Rika delve into the tunnels under the city following Takado's compass that points to Digimon. They find him in a digital field tangled up by data. They find him just in time to free him and get out before Hypnos deletes the field and everything inside it. Now, after almost losing Guilmon, Impmon starts harassing people in the park at night, and in the original, Terriermon states that Guilmon could be the culprit since no one knows who it is. In the dub, he states that the culprit is too small to be an adult. That night, Impmon drags Guilmon out to harass more couples. Not understanding Guilmon wasn't the one harassing people, Takado blows up at Guilmon. Now, the dub has this problem that the entire episode, Takado is worried that people will find Guilmon, and it isn't alluded to Takado that Guilmon could be the culprit before Guilmon tells him that he was scaring people. What also adds to the problem is that Takado in the dub states that he just can't take it anymore, which is a poor word choice, as in the context of the episode, Guilmon just didn't listen to Takado once, so his word choice makes his anger come out of nowhere, where all they needed to add was a line about Guilmon never listening when Takado found out Guilmon didn't stay at the hideout. Now, Terriermon does learn the truth and relays it to Takado right before Davidramon almost kills him. Guilmon digivolves to Growlmon and destroys Davidramon. The following episode has Takado and Henry try and get Growlmon to return to Guilmon. After that, we get Rika struggling with what she wants out of her partnership with Renamon. While doing so, she starts getting stalked by an Ice Devimon. In the dub, it's so that she can be his partner to make him digivolve. And because I have still been unable to find a subversion I can watch, I'm not entirely sure on the original context. Rika ends up seeing how Ice Devimon defeats his enemies, leaving their lifeless bodies encased in ice. Scared that this is essentially what she and Renamon have been doing, Rika turns on Renamon and all Digimon, proclaiming that she hates them all. The following episode sees Henry and Terriermon fighting over their dynamic and views on fighting, ending with Terriermon having to digivolve so that he can defeat a Musayamon. The following episode wraps up the end of the first arc of Tamers. After the Ice Devimon incident, Renamon took off and she and Rika stayed out of contact, both wanting the other to need them, but being unwilling to say so. When 3 Digimon enter the real world, Renamon shows up to fight, hoping to meet Rika there. As she fights, Henry meets with Rika outside, where she runs from the battle. Renamon then defeats the Digimon on her own, and after leaving the digital field, Henry tells Renamon that Rika is worried about her.
Renamon, Rika was here. I think she's worried about you.
She is? Are you sure?
Henry's conversation with Renamon is interesting. He uses the term partner when speaking about Renamon and Rika's relationship, and Renamon acts as if she doesn't know what the word means. However, the relationship between the two, while business-oriented, is only part of their story. They are partners, but they are unable to face any real challenges without each other. The word Henry should have used is friend instead of partner. Even though Rika doesn't really say that they are partners, both of them understand that they need each other for the Digivolution process. Them being friends would be a more foreign concept for Renamon since she comes from the digital world, which in this incarnation is a battle-torn wasteland where only the strong can survive. Even if Renamon didn't ever work alongside other Digimon, she is likely to have seen Digimon work together, or at least be offered to join a group of Digimon at some point. My point is phrasing. The simple substitution of a word can make a world of difference. So Henry and Takato meet Yamaki for the first time, and he reveals that he's been watching the kids and knows about the Digimon. After, we get to learn that Jerry is a closet Digimon nerd wanting to meet Guilmon, and after getting a small part of Impmon's backstory, he and Renamon have a conversation. They discuss needing a human partner and how to digivolve without one. On Rika's side, her grandmother talks to her and essentially says that she needs other people. Another Digimon appears that brings Rika and Renamon back together, and when Renamon is in danger, Rika reacts, stepping in to save Renamon. After digivolving, Cubimon defeats Harpymon and refuses to load the data, claiming that she doesn't need it since she has Rika. I love this arc. I'm also biased, but I love this arc. Tamers has easily the most rounded out characters of the Digidestin of any season. Mainly because Adventure had 7 kids and their Digimon that they had to give character development to, all of which had to reach their champion forms in the first arc. This causes the first half of the arc to feel front-loaded, followed by them all being separated and having to come back together again, so the cast doesn't have any real time to breathe. Adventure 2, while having a smaller cast of main characters, is also juggling their old cast, so they have 11 Digidestin and their Digimon, not counting Ken and Wormmon. They get some room by not having them digivolve quickly since they digivolve in their debut episode, barring Kari and TK. But they spend the entire time either having the old cast come in, or having the new cast trying to stop Ken, with no other things to give the cast some downtime. We get some moments, but they are small and far in between. Tamers takes its time to set all their pieces, because they downsize to 3 main characters. It allows more time for the story to establish their characters. I can tell you more about Takato and his interests than I can from Tai. Tai's main interest outside of saving everyone is soccer. Takato is an artist that loves the wider Digimon franchise. He plays the card game, he has a crush on Jerry, and spends most of his free time playing games with his friends. We also get to meet the other Tamers that will join the team later. Unlike Adventure, where we meet Kari 21 episodes in, Adventure 2 technically starts with us meeting Ken before the new main cast, but they don't interact until the second episode. Tamers actually lets us meet and interact with almost all of our secondary cast before we meet the main cast, and none of the main characters know each other until after they meet in the series. Adventure had all the characters have ties with each other even if they didn't know it. O2 had most of the cast know each other at the start. Tamers is the first where that changes. Yes, Takato knows the secondary cast barring Suzy and Rio, and Ai and Mako, if you want to include them, but they don't get a Digivice until the finale. But because of all that, we get to know more about the kids and how they act in everyday life. We learn about their struggles, and it allows the main cast to feel more human. Anyway, we enter into the second arc, the Deva arc. One of, if not the best written arc of the series. After Yamaki makes himself known, he activates Juggernaut, or Shagai. I'm not sure how to pronounce the original name, Juggernaut is a program designed to attract all Digimon in the human world. Juggernaut both works and fails as it draws in all the Digimon hiding in the human world, but it also draws in the first of the Deva that plagues the cast, Mahiramon, a tiger Digimon that easily dispatches the champion forms. The battle is great because it's the first time the cast is in real danger of losing their Digimon to a stronger opponent. Yes, Renamon had a few close calls, but this is the first Digimon capable of defeating the cast without much effort. After Groundmon is defeated, he and Takato speak to each other via psychic link. It's not explained in the dub. And the two choose to continue the fight, evolving to the next level, War Groundmon, and they defeat the first Deva. By the way, on a small side note, this is the first time that the kids had a more physical connection with the Digimon. Takato able to feel Guillomon's pain alongside him. In 02, there was a mention that Ken and Davis were connected when they DNA digivolved, but it didn't really go anywhere. Here we get to see how it affects the main cast. They're connected in more ways than one, allowing their feelings to push their Digimon further. Anyway, the Deva arc begins, and now all of Takato's class knows that Digimon exist. Takato's friends, Kenta, Kazu, and Jerry, will aspire to become tamers with their own Digimon during the next few episodes, with Jerry becoming partners with Leomon, though he does fight against it to start. Now, the Deva arc brings back more of the moral dilemma that 02 tried to do with the Digimon Emperor arc. While talking to his sensei, Henry asks about the Devas, which I'm no expert, but the internet states that Devas in our world are the Hindu versions of gods, with their enemy being Asuras. Now, this definition would make the human world in Digimon the Asura, and both sides are battling for some form of control over the other, for reasons on the human side being to protect themselves from the invading Digimon, and the Digimon we come to learn are trying to save themselves from their true enemy. Both sides are fighting for survival, and the moral quandary is, are the Devas evil because they're doing whatever is necessary to protect themselves? The Devas aren't black and white. Yes, from our perspective, they want to kill all the humans so they can take control of our world. But from their perspective, they are trying to run from something that nearly annihilated them once and is threatening to do so again. And when trying to find a safe place to hide, they end up in the human world where they are attacked by a select group that see them as lesser beings. So the Digimon and eventually Devas fight back. So are they truly evil? Some may start by saying yes, they are. The Devas are attacking humans trying to kill them. Some may take a more sympathetic stance. Azulonmon believes they need to band together to fend off their true enemy for the good of the digital world, while Zuchaomon wants to wipe out the humans because they pose a threat to the digital world. And he's right. The human world created the Digimon in this canon and then chose to throw them away. When they started growing, the human world then started attacking them. It's impossible to know which side started the fights, but human nature tends to put self-preservation above all else. Anyway, midway through the arc, we start focusing on Impmon a little more to the point that we learn he wants to be able to digivolve, though he doesn't have the strength to, mainly because he hates humans due to his past with his partners. We learn this when the Deva Indramon appears, revealing that he was kept by Ai and Mako. As Rika appears, he vanishes. Impmon claims he's the strongest Digimon, and he doesn't need the help from anyone. When Indramon reappears, Impmon tries to fight him on his own, and proceeds to get nearly killed. He survives, and while on the brink of death, Katuramon appears, offering to make him digivolve if he joins them. Impmon agrees and returns to the digital world. During the arc, the kids start putting together that Calumon has something to do with evolution, since he has been there every time they evolve, and after defeating a number of the Devas, Takato alongside some of his friends come across a mysterious kid that seems very interested in getting his hands on both Takato's Digivice and Calumon. We learned during the final Deva attack of the city that this kid is Makuramon, one of the Devas sent to kidnap Calumon for his power of evolution. The kids managed to defeat the Deva Vicalamon, who'd caused quite a bit of property damage. At the same time, Hypnos, who was using Juggernaut to destroy the Deva, ends up being destroyed in the process. After the fight, Makuramon reveals himself as a Deva and kidnaps Calumon, returning to the digital world. And at the same time, Leomon gets injured and becomes Jerry's partner after refusing her when they first met. So now the kids have to enter the digital world to stage a rescue mission. While searching for a way into the digital world, the kids decide to tell their families that they're leaving. Takato introduces Guilmon to his parents, Rika's grandmother learns about Renamon, and Henry reveals that Terramon is alive to his sister. Jerry, who is now partnered with Leomon, has him explain that they're all going to the digital world. Guilmon manages to find a portal to the digital world under his home in the park. The kids resolve to leave after telling their families, and Takato, Jerry, Kazu, and Kenta tell their teacher that they're leaving. Right before they enter the digital world, Yamaki shows up and gives the kids a communication device so they can contact the human world. Let's talk about the digital world because the story doesn't have as much happening as the amount of episodes might have you believe.
The digital world in this iteration is vastly different from the previous two and every other version. The world is a wasteland, and while there are communities in the digital world, they are few and far in between. Those that do exist are either plagued by Digimon or were wiped out and left as ghost towns. Traveling throughout the world, you are likely to come across wandering data packets of old data that no longer have much of a form. These packets, while most likely being all that remains of old Digimon that succumbed to the dangers of the digital world, can be used as food or medicine for the odd Digimon. It's hard to find anywhere safe, as Digimon are constantly trying to get stronger to face the dangers of the digital world. There are those who won't fight and just seek safety, but even without battle, it can be quite easy to get separated from your friends, as any time someone on our side searches for anything, a beam of data that connects the two worlds comes down, and if you get caught in it, you could be sent anywhere across the digital world, left alone in a place you don't know. The digital world this time around isn't somewhere you want to be. There's dangers at every corner, but there are a few good things too. When the kids first enter the digital world, Renamon tells them that the laws of the real world don't apply. The bright side to this is that the world reacts by what you believe. If you believe you can breathe underwater, then, well, there you go. One of the other upsides is that you only get hungry when you decide. So if you never think about food, then you're never going to get hungry. So the kids proceed to look for Calumon when they reach the digital world. They meet a few friends on the way, the first being a Meramon who promptly dies a few hours later, setting up that in the digital world, you never drop your guard. Now, I stated that the story doesn't progress as much as you would think. The kids constantly get sucked up by data streams and get separated from each other. During this time, Kazu and Kenta will try to become partners with pretty much every friendly Digimon they come across. Kazu eventually partners with a Gardermon, and Kenta receives his Digimon partner at the end of the arc as they leave for the real world. When Rika, Kenta, Kazu, and Renamon get separated from the rest of the group, they come across another Digimon team. Some may know the Digidestined as Ryo from one of the games that was never localized. He also appeared as a minor role in Adventure 2 and Children's War Game. He acts as a kid's guide through the digital world while he travels with them. He and Cyberdramon are constantly looking for a strong opponent to fight, so he doesn't stay with the team for long. While we're on the subject, let's talk about Ryo real quick. He's supposed to be the experienced tamer that is the example of what the kid should strive to become, but he is the absolute worst example of a tamer we could get. He and Cyberdramon are never on the same page. Ryo has to whip his Digimon to get him to listen, and the only way we really see them interact with each other is by fighting. Anyway, the story starts picking up while searching for Rika and Calumon. After Rika leaves the party and Kenta, Kazu, and Ryo join up with the others, Rika gets swept up into a river where Calumon shows up just in time to pull her out. Right after, Rika joins back up with the others before they're attacked by Beelzemon. Cubemon immediately recognizes him as Impmon. They're saved by the human world activating a Juggernaut. This activates a data storm that allows the Davis to capture Calumon again, and Takayo, Henry, and Terriermon get separated from the others as they are swept up into data streams. While the two groups are separated, Rika's group meets an Andromon who returns to his champion form as Gardermon, and partners with Kazu. They defeat an Arachimon, and that's about all. And on Takayo and Henry's side, they make contact with the human world, assuring the kids' families that they're all safe. Not long after, they meet Shibumi, someone who worked on the Digimon project that Henry's father worked on. Only unlike the rest of the monster makers who stopped working on the project, Shibumi continued. Shibumi claims he created Takayo and Henry before stating that everyone's sleeping, dreaming of what they may become one day, so that when they wake, they can start their own evolution. He then explains what the Diginomes are and what the blue card is. The blue card is an algorithm that allows Digimon to evolve beyond their original parameters, eventually allowing them to enter the human world. Shibumi tells them how to leave the digital world and lets them know about the Sovereign who governs over it. He then tells them that the Sovereign are afraid of something before sending them on their way. Now, after leaving Shibumi for the land of the Sovereign, Suzy ends up falling into the digital world where she comes across Antilamon, the last of the Devas, and while trying to get rid of Suzy, Antilamon starts liking Suzy and becomes her partner. At the same time, Henry and Takato run into the two. The following episode, we learn about the Light of Evolution, as Calumon is dropped into the pit where the Sovereign plans on harnessing his power. On Takato's side, they run into Beelzemon. Takato calls upon Guilmon during the fight between Beelzemon and Rapidmon, and the other group runs through a data stream, ending up with everyone together. As the entire group fights, Cubemon almost gets killed, saved by Leomon, leading to Beelzemon killing and absorbing Leomon's data. Out of anger, Groundmon digivolves to War Groundmon, and then Takato forces War Groundmon to digivolve again to Megidramon. Megidramon almost kills Beelzemon, though his more primal focus on fighting allows Beelzemon to get the upper hand when he absorbs more data, giving him just enough strength to defeat Megidramon. Now, I have two problems with this. Very small problems, but problems nonetheless. The first one is with Leomon dying, and the problem comes from him not having more time with Jerry. If they had a few more episodes where they could be partners more on their own, this wouldn't be an issue. We just didn't get enough time with them together, which can cheapen their relationship. The other is when Megidramon finishes his evolution. Takato goes from blind rage to remorseful immediately. He should only realize he screwed up after he's called out. After Megidramon is defeated, Takato runs over to him, and Takato comes to terms with his biggest character arc being what happens if he loses Guilmon to evolution. He wishes they could start over, and in the most surreal scene of the show, Takato manages to wake Guilmon. Upon finding Guilmon, they awaken from their "I'm going with" vision, in time to stop Beelzemon's attack. Determined to fight together, the two biomerge to Galmon, or Dukemon depending on the dub, and together they fight Beelzemon, almost killing him if not for Jerry, who stops them at the last second. Beelzemon questions Jerry about why she would protect him. Jerry's reasoning is that she doesn't want anyone to get hurt because of her, and her line of thinking ends up shaking Beelzemon. He goes off on his own, disgusted by the person he's become, and he wants to give back all the data he's gathered. The following episode sees half the team going to meet with Zuchalmon. Henry, who is worried about his sister, tries to take the burden of getting them all home safely upon himself, which almost leads to Terriermon getting destroyed. Upon realizing he can't do everything alone and that he has friends there to back him up, Henry and Terriermon biomerge. They don't manage to defeat Zuchalmon, but they do manage to drop him in a hole and collapse his home on top of him. Zuchalmon quickly escapes the tomb and launches another attack. They continue fighting until the Azulonmon appears and stops Zuchalmon. Azulonmon and eventually Shibumi then explains the truth about the true enemy and Calumon. Calumon, who holds power of evolution, was once just a power. One day, with the help of the Diginomes, he became a Digimon and was released into the human world, and the Digimon's true enemy is neither human nor Digimon, but another entity altogether. This entity known as Chaos, or the D-Reaper. The D-Reaper exists only to delete data that has grown beyond its original parameters. The D-Reaper is such a threat that a simple touch leads to death, and at current, it lies beneath the digital world. In the earliest days of the digital world, the Digimon and Gnomes lived alongside the D-Reaper, which nearly wiped out the Digimon. One day, it simply disappeared, and the Digimon started thriving until the D-Reaper reappeared. Since then, the Digimon started trying to gain power so that they could defeat the D-Reaper when it inevitably returned for a third time. After explaining everything, Azulonmon helps the kids save Calumon from his prison. On the way, we see Takato trying to cheer up Jerry, and we get the main part of our lead into the last arc. Jerry's mother died at some point in the past, and she promised to never let someone take her place. This led to her being distant from her stepmother when her father remarried. When getting to Calumon's prison, the kids are faced with the true nature of the D-Reaper as it's leaking into the digital world. The kids dived into the depths to find Calumon, and upon deciding that she wants to stay behind to hold back the chaos so everyone else can escape, Rika biomerges with Renamon to Sakuyamon. They save Calumon, and the D-Reaper spreads itself across the digital world and reaches the human world. At the same time, the D-Reaper, preying upon Jerry's pain, swaps her with a clone. Back in the human world, Yamaki, alongside the help of Hypnos, the kids' families, and people all across the world, are trying to create an arc to bring back the kids. We also see Beelzemon letting Digimon drain him of his data, regretting his actions. Calumon unleashes his power, allowing all the Digimon that are partnered with the children to digivolve to their highest forms. Kenta finally meets his partner, Marine Angemon, who only speaks in simple noises, and in the English version, sometimes he spouts off a word or two. Takato gets a message from Yamaki saying they're going to bring the kids home. They also have a time limit. Rika goes off before they leave to find Impmon and don't make the time limit, as their ride leaves without her. Takato, who didn't get on, is also left in the digital world with them, only saved because Guilmon asked for the arc, eventually named Grani, to stop. With everyone on board, the kids return to the human world where they are met by their families, for the most part. You see, Jerry's father didn't show up, saying that she left on her own and can return on her own. This is where the digital world arc ends and the final arc officially begins. While not my favorite arc, that would be a toss-up to the Deva arc and the final arc of the season. The digital world arc is a good one, if a little slow to start. They really try and build up Takato's main character arc being his fears of losing Guilmon, only to pull the rug out from under us and kill off Leomon. So Jerry can have her character arc and Takato can face his fears when Megidramon appears. This isn't a true endpoint of Takayo's arc, as that comes at the very end of the series, but if his arc did end here, it would have been fine, as he does have a secondary arc that ties in with Jerry's arc. You don't really get it in the English dub, but in the original, there's a constant storyline that Takayo has a crush on Jerry, and this tie will help push Takayo to save Jerry during the last few episodes. Anyway, Takayo offers to take Jerry home since she's alone. On the way, he confesses his feelings to Jerry, not knowing she's a D-Reaper clone. After dropping off Jerry, Takayo learns that the D-Reaper has invaded the human world. We see all the kids, excluding Takayo, with their families. We also see Impmon trying to find his partners, and the Jerry clone is torturing Jerry's half-brother. Takayo calls his mother to tell her he's going to fight the D-Reaper. Rika's mother tells her she can go and fight while giving her a new shirt, also giving a permanent outfit change for Rika. Even if it goes from a broken heart to a complete one, it's nice symbolism. Henry talks to his sensei and mother, who gives him advice that will lead him to join the fight. All the kids meet up at the underground tunnel, and at the other end, they run into the D-Reaper scouts. Over the course of the next few days, the kids sleep at the school and eat at Takayo's home while trying to fight the D-Reaper. We also learn, thanks to a well-placed camera, that the D-Reaper can't destroy things in the human world the same as the digital world. It also can't process biological matter either. We also see Impmon trying to get directions to Ai and Mako's grandmother's house, the only person willing to help him being Henry's sensei. After reading the message left for Impmon, he gives Impmon the reasoning as to why he isn't afraid of him. He then finds his partners by complete chance. Shibumi rejoins the Monster Makers and explains to them what the D-Reaper is, while the kids explain it to Yamaki. While the kids fight their first battle against the D-Reaper, Impmon is with Ai and Mako and learns about the fight. And without hesitation, he takes off ready to join. He evolves to Beelzemon and turns to Beelzemon Blast Mode before he joins to help. Now, while the kids continue fighting the D-Reaper, Takayo notices Jerry popping up even though she should be hours away. On the second day, the kids meet up with their parents back at Rika's house for breakfast, and when they head back out to fight, the kids meet up with a girl named Alice. She is a tamer as well, with her Digimon being sent on a mission to sacrifice himself so the kids can biomerge in the human world. Meanwhile, the Ark makes contact with Yamaki and they start work on Grani. While the three Megas fight, the other tamers barring Suzy and who sends Lotmon start showing up to help after they defeat the biggest agent, and only after Gallantmon gets pulled into the D-Reaper mass. Once inside, they lose their evolution, unable to hold their biomerge. Takayo runs across the Jerry clone and learns that she's been captured by the D-Reaper. He also learns the D-Reaper's goal. So now we get to the D-Reaper's motives and what makes it such a great antagonist. We already know that the D-Reaper exists to delete anything that has grown beyond its original parameters, but we haven't seen the twisted logic it uses. For one, it assimilates Jerry so that it can learn about humans, and it could only do so because Jerry, after Leomon died, had her thoughts creeping towards those of destruction and pain, the only thing the D-Reaper can think about. It wants to destroy all humans and Digimon because of inherent defects. The D-Reaper believes it's some sort of perfect being. Humans are to be destroyed partly because they have emotions, which the D-Reaper can't feel. The D-Reaper exists only to destroy everything that has evolved. It doesn't bother with plants because when you think about it, plants act as simple machines. They turn carbon dioxide into oxygen through photosynthesis. They don't think, they don't move. Likely, the D-Reaper sees them as objects that stayed inside their parameters, so there's no reason to delete them. However, the D-Reaper is flawed because in order for it to complete its purpose, the D-Reaper must evolve to continue deleting the ever-evolving Digimon and eventually humans. It must evolve to fulfill its original purpose, and in order to evolve, it must absorb data and use it. This twists the D-Reaper to the point where it starts acting more like a Digimon. Instead of existing only to remove evolution, it starts trying to remove anything it sees as weak. Anyway, with the help of Kanto and Marine Andromon, the kids rescue Takayo and Guilmon, and upon meeting up at Hypnos, they learn of the central consciousness of the D-Reaper, where Jerry is being held. They also learn where it is thanks to Calmon and Beelzemon finding it between the government buildings Hypnos was located in. Beelzemon and Calmon were also captured by the D-Reaper while trying to save Jerry. The kids learn about Grani, and Shibumi borrows Henry's Digivice so he can give Grani form, and Takayo tries to talk to Jerry's father, who doesn't respond to him. We see Jerry's father try and find Jerry. The kids, barring Henry, show up, and the D-Reaper shows one of its flaws. As it scans Jerry's memories, it runs into a contradiction between her feelings for her father. The D-Reaper, while trying to understand what emotions are, is unable to process the complexity of someone who both loves and has resentment for someone else.
The kids launch an attack against the D-Reaper, which brings out the biggest agent it's had, and Grani emerges to help, tipping the battle in the kids' favor. After the fight, the kids return to their temporary home where they see how the digital world is faring and learn that the D-Reaper is spreading across the world. The D-Reaper evolves, protects itself, and the kids learn that Beelzemon is trapped inside. They launch an attack, with most of them splitting the D-Reaper's focus while Takayo goes to save Jerry. Beelzemon gets thrown out of the kernel, where he meets Gallantmon, and they work together to free Jerry, only managing to break through when using Grani's Zugoth blaster, and when Beelzemon calls upon Leomon's data and uses his Fist of the Beast King. Takayo manages to get Jerry to rouse from her stupor, but she hesitates when Beelzemon uses Leomon's attack. Because of this, she stays trapped, and before they can break through again, Beelzemon nearly gets killed and dropped into the D-Reaper, saved by Grani. As the D-Reaper stops the others from going after him. They retreat as the United Nations show up to attack the D-Reaper with a jamming device. The D-Reaper responds by using the negative emotions from Jerry to evolve to a stronger form. Afterwards, the kids retreat fully because they have no way to fight inside the D-Reaper, so they're left to wait until the adults can find a way to deal with it. What they do is load a program into Terriermon that will destabilize the D-Reaper, and Shibumi gives Henry a red card that will allow the kids to fight inside of the D-Reaper. While that's going on, Calmon stops Jerry from trying to kill herself. I'm not joking. So the four of the can biomerge meet up so they can launch one last attack so they can save Jerry, as they are still unaware of the program that was loaded into Terriermon. As they fight, Gallantmon gets damaged, and Grani sacrifices himself to restore Gallantmon, and allow him to digivolve to Crimson Gallantmon. And as they continue the fight to save Jerry, Henry is told about the program and sets it off. Takayo finally reaches Jerry as his evolution form fails, and as the D-Reaper is pushed back thanks to the help of the Sovereign. And after the world is saved, the kids are left standing in the park where they are forced to say goodbye to their Digimon, as the program that returned the D-Reaper to a more harmless state also made it nearly impossible for the Digimon to stay in the human world. All of the kids' character arcs come to a close here. Jerry, while never going to be over Leomon, has healed enough to move on, and will likely start to building a relationship with her stepmother, and will repair her relationship with her father. Rika, who has come to terms with her feelings surrounding her family, learning that while her mother may not look like it, she is trying. Henry finally learned that he has to fight some battles, but those battles that he fights must have meaning behind them. Takayo finishes both of his arcs now that he has Jerry back, and he is forced to lose Guilmon, though now without Guilmon, he is forced to move on. Normally he's okay, though he does want to keep his promise to Guilmon that they'll see each other again. Now, I stated a few videos ago that I would talk about why I love the series as much as I do. Beyond everything, I've stated for how great the story is, there are two things I want to state clearly. The first is that I can relate to the characters a lot. This show helped to form the person I am today, like all media we watch as kids form us. This one just had the biggest impact. The other reason is that my siblings also enjoyed Tamers, so it was a good way for us to bridge the generations, as there is a time gap between me and my older siblings. I won't say how big the gap is, but I will say that Tamers and even World 3 was a way that I bonded with my brother and sister. So despite the minor problems this season has, I really can't bring up any negative emotions directed towards Tamers. I know a lot of Digimon fans only watched Adventure. It's why they focused so much on it the last few years with Tri and Last Evolution Kizuna before the reboot. I just wanted to point out each season has its strengths. Even the ones that have many more problems have things to pay attention to. Even the seasons that I don't like have their moments. They're worth watching, and if you haven't seen Tamers or Frontier or Data Squad, even Fusion, I would recommend at least giving them a look.